things upon which future generations can build with confidence. Let us continue to strive to make a better world. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the next item is the approval of the final agenda. Is there a motion to approve the final agenda?
I'll move to approve the final agenda.
I'll second.
And moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I need to recuse myself from the public hearing for the Tuckaway. It's I believe the second one on the agenda.
Okay,
I have filed the paperwork with the clerk.
okay. Good morning. Okay, so noted. Okay, any other discussion? Any objection? Motion carries unanimously. Next item is public comment. Madam Clerk.
John R. King, and following Mr. King will be Dave Nussbaum.
John R. King, Board of Directors, Islands Inn, 8400, 8402, and 8403 Estero Boulevard. I attended the MRF meeting of April 13th and heard their recommendations to you regarding sea turtle glass. The chair of MRF referred to those seeking a rollback to 45% tinting as thinking it provides a get-out-of-jail-free card. 3 times he used that phrase in discussing the issue. I don't know when I became a criminal just by barely buying my condo, but what I'm seeking here and others are is economic relief and some common sense. An owner in my association is paying an additional $12,500 for 15% tint glass. This owner placed their order in September and they still have not been made. Only 2 manufacturers produce the 15% glass and they're having trouble getting the product. The chair of MRF also kept referring to FWC as recommending the 15% tint. However, FDEP is the controlling authority on the issue, and they categorically state 45%. At 15%, you're mandating a living environment be shrouded in darkness 24 hours a day for an occurrence that may happen up to 6 months of a year. This is an undue burden that is dependent on the whims of turtles and the weather. Where's the common sense? Other concerns with the ordinance include the use of one-man site as the basis for compliance. It reminds me of U.S. Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart's remark on pornography. I know it when I see it. Except in this case, there's actual technology that can be used to accurately record light brightness. You'll find a condo association, if it can't be determined an exact unit, they may be in lighting violation. You wouldn't find a whole neighborhood because of the actions of one homeowner. My association's 111 individual homeowners. I can't control the actions of my neighbors any more than a regular neighborhood can, yet I'm being held accountable for their actions. Let's quit punishing people for living their lives. Looking for a solution instead, let's create an opportunity. Nova Southeastern University is contracted by Broward County to implement their sea turtle conservation program. Broward's considered a medium density nesting area by FWC. They average 2,000 nests annually. NSU monitors over 24 miles of beaches, and they're permitted to steer turtles back to the ocean. We have 1/3 of the beach and less than 1/10 of the nests. Let's work with FGCU on this, or maybe a nonprofit opportunity. Sea Turtle Oversight Protection, also in Broward, charges people to possibly witness newborn turtles emerging from a nest. Their trained staff rescue disoriented turtles. They reduce the hatchling mortality rate by almost 50%. Turtle Time, or some other organization, needs to step up. Given what I've shared today, I believe you should scrap this ordinance, start over with the entire thing. Thank you.
Next.
Dave Nussbaum, and after Mr. Nussbaum will be Bill Altoff.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Councilman. My name is Dave Nussbaum. I'm president of Island Winds Condominium located at 6610. For the record today, I would like to submit a letter from Bob Loringer on the board for Mariners Boathouse and Beach Resort. Mariners was in charge of a project to replace all of their windows. He could not be here today. I'm submitting his letter. They missed the cutoff by 1 week and had their 45 tint ready to go in, missed it by 1 week, and had to go back to 0. This is an undue burden on them. I would also like to submit for the record, and this is off of the FWC website that there were 6 turtle disorientations last year on hatching. That's down from the last 3 years. I believe that is because of education. I believe it's staff effort. I believe it's turtle time effort. I believe it's getting the knowledge out. Putting an undue restriction of 15% glass means nothing if a person opens their slider. That lets all the light in. You could have it blacked out. If they open a slider, it goes on, the light goes on the beach. Education and participation for the visitors that come down to this beach is the key if those 6 displacements are an issue, not an onerous ordinance that puts us in darkness 12 months out of the year. I ask you to please take a look at that. Also on the ordinance, there is a verbiage on a plan that condominiums must submit a plan. I'm not sure why condominiums got singled out on this. There are timeshares, there are resorts, there are individual people that live along the beach that have to follow the same rules. So I would please ask you to look at a little more inclusive and a broader sense. Plus, we have no idea what a plan means. We ask every resident and visitor to come in to sign a statement saying they have observed the turtle ordinance and they will follow it. We give them information. We have pop-ups. We have refrigerator magnets. We continue to try and educate the visitors. That's the key to getting those numbers down. Thank you.
Bill Altoff. Following Bill will be George Repetti.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bill Altoff, president of the Shamron Beach Condominium at 7650 Estero Boulevard. And I would like you to reconsider you requiring the 0.15 tint glass and repeal the ordinance in its entirety at best, or delay the implementation at worst. Shamron Beach is a 40-year-old condominium on the south side of the island with 54 residents. Many of our owners are voting residents. Our building is planning a window replacement on the Gulf side, bringing the windows up to current code. The 0.15 glass adds significant costs to our project. I want to convey our support to all the turtle protections that you have put in place during the all-important nesting and hatching seasons. It's great that the council has been so proactive, thoughtful, and protective of these endangered species. We all share your support for this. It was Darwin who said the love of all living creatures is the most noble attribute of man. Again, the council should be commended. I have several concerns over your new ordinance. The statewide DEP model lighting ordinance is 4.5, as you know, the blueprint for a consistent statewide plan for beachfront properties. Yet the 0.15 requirement is not consistent with the state guidelines. This requirement also lengthens product lead time, causing stress to the install schedule. And the cost, as I've said, is high. The existing ordinance is supported by the Turtle Time and the Marine Task Force, both environmental groups. The residents and owners need to help with this decision, and we want a balanced approach. The majority of the turtle nesting in this state is on the East Coast between Melbourne and Fort Lauderdale, and that came from the FWC information. Yet Palm Beach County, which is in that area, still has the statewide requirement of 0.45 glass. Again, that's the majority of the nestings. Please vote to remove the very restrictive local ordinance, bringing our regulations into state compliance. I am asking for the balance. Please keep your taxpayer and residents involved, as well as the protection of the turtles. These two groups are not at odds. Although your goal is well-intentioned and noble, you must also recognize it's a significant negative impact on our existing structures and the residents. Thank you.
George Repetti. Following Mr. Repetti is Robert Galvanani.
Good morning, George Repetti, Islands End Condominiums, 8402 Estero Boulevard. I, like John King, went to the Murph's meeting the last time they were deciding or talking about this issue. Spent 3 hours sitting in that chair, listening to the most pompous conversation I've ever heard. They were constantly worried and concerned about how they were going to protect us, the homeowner, the condo owner. I believe that most of what was going on, the decisions that were made that night, it appeared to me that someone sitting in this chair was making very head motions and facial motions, which was almost directing the chairman. One important issue that night, though, was they were all concerned about how they were going to force us to comply with the law. And not only to comply with the law, but they were going to force us to take care of ourselves, because we're not able to do that. We need somebody like Murph or this council to tell us what we can do. One gentleman suggested, and rightfully so, that even if we painted the glass, even if they required us to paint the glass black, we would still be able to open the windows and open the glass and let the light out. I expected the chairman, who had a lot of really smart ideas that night, I expected the chairman of that group to indicate that maybe we should put locks on everybody's windows and doors and let Chad have the key. They were protecting us against the wrath of Chad that night, okay? We don't have to be protected against the wrath of Chad. We had probably the lowest rate of disorientations. I don't know how the hell they figure out the disorientation and how it came from light, but we had probably the lowest of all of the various communities in this area by letting us do our own thing. Move it down to 15%, even for another couple of years. Okay, giving us that window for a couple of years isn't going to resolve the problem. The problem is to let us resolve it ourselves. And on the subject of Chad, instead of keeping Chad down in the condominium area and going from condominium to condominium taking pictures, I suggest maybe he go to, I don't know, the Convention Center, Lani Kai, Wyndham, and all the other hotels, motels, restaurants, and bars who have lights on all night long, okay? He doesn't seem to go in that area. He seems to stay down with us because I guess the old gray-haired people down at the south end of the island need a little bit more care. Thank you very much.
Robert Galvanani, and following Robert is Ginger Weber.
Good job on my last name. Thank you. I'm Bob Galvanoni. I'm the president of Carlos Point Beach Club, their board of directors. We're at 8350 Estero Boulevard. I'm here to talk about the transmittance 15%. Carlos Point has 104 condo units facing the Gulf. Nearly all the owners rent their units very actively. They advertise sun, sand, and warmth, and beautiful views of the Gulf at the tip of Lovers Key State Park. And this sells very well. Since early January, the Carlos Point Board has been educating its owners about the light pollution ordinance. Owners have been repeatedly warned about the May 1st to October 31st turtle season, and warning signs are posted at many places around the building and within many of the condo units. Our board owners' approval passed with that board and owners' approval, we passed a resolution allowing the board to pass through any light pollution fines to violating owners. However, if Carlos Point is ticketed, we need citations that are number one. Like a speeding ticket, each citation must be based on a measurable standard, such as, quote, the building seaside light emission measurement of 600-foot candles at a distance of 500 feet from the building exceeds the 450-foot candle limit. Not, it looks like, seems like, feels like too much light. Citations are issued by town officers, not by volunteers roaming the beach at night. That's the second. We want the citation legible, that's the third, with the town officer's name signed and printed on it, including a picture of the building so we can determine the offending condo unit owner or owners, the date and time of the offense. Number four, we need the citation emailed to us so we can quickly inform the owners that they or their renters need to correct the problem ASAP. We'll be glad to provide you the email addresses for that. Number 5, we need to be limits on the maximum dollar amount of citations issued per turtle's nesting season, or there will be a big upheaval from the condo owners on this island. Our budgets do not build in turtle citations. We've set up a process to handle citations within 24 hours of receiving them, but we hope we don't have to have that put in place. Please understand that 3 of the 4 people involved in that process live at least 1,000 miles from Fort Myers Beach from early May to mid-October. Carlos Point owners are very wary of being easy pickings for enforcement and citations because we sit exposed and easily accessible at the end of the island. The owners are on pins and needles and want enforcement applied equally to all condos and hotels on Fort Myers Beach. Nobody wants to assess fines to their renters who come to relax and enjoy. One good way to kill our revenues and yours is to develop a reputation for heavy-handed turtle protection. Fining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ginger Weber, and following Ginger Weber is Susan O'Brien.
Hi, good morning. I'm Ginger Weber, owner of Mid-Island Water Sports. We also do the beach furniture rentals from just south of the Outrigger down to the Wyndham. So I am here to speak about the turtle lighting ordinance, but for a little bit of a different topic within it. When the new turtle ordinance was adopted in 2020, a couple of sentences were changed between the first and the second reading that had far-reaching effects. This change affects the removal of all man-made objects in any sandy area during the 6 months of turtle season between 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. I would like to request that this be added to the council's discussion as you work on the turtle ordinance in the upcoming weeks. I emailed you all with some possible options. I did a little research, kind of trying to see how other municipalities handled the same, what we're talking about here. In June of 2021, I know that Tanya Long, who's fish and wildlife biologist for the FWC, had some back and forth with Chad, and she had some possible options that were pretty similar to what most people are doing now, but not quite so stringent. We all know it's important to have ordinances on the books that can be reasonably enforced. We wish to always be a part of those best practices, and we hope to find a compromise that reasonably provides a safe and optimal nesting area on Fort Myers Beach. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Susan O'Brien, and following Susan is Jan Coyne.
Sue O'Brien, Sandcape Condominium, 6900 Estero Boulevard. I really don't have anything planned to say, but I definitely want to mention education is the most important part of turtle time, and educating the people to the proper way of handling their lights. Ordinances are not going to really work, especially for people who are renting, who don't have a clue as to what's going on. I think with town council, with staff, monitoring the beach, and truly educating, I think we see over the past number of years that the number of incidents of turtles disorientated has dropped, and that's totally through education. So whatever everybody else has said, I totally agree with, and really would push for stronger education. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jan Coyne.
Good morning. I'm Jan Coyne, representing the Sandcaper Condominium Association at 6900 Estero Boulevard. In the sake of saving us all some time, I simply want to state that we completely agree and share the concerns that have been expressed by many people here today. We submitted a letter at the early March meeting on this topic and continue to agree with the points raised in that letter. One of the many things that we stated is that while we support the efforts of Turtle Time and the Town Council to protect turtles, we strongly believe that retaining the current ordinance, that language will likely result in the opposite intended outcome. Limited inventory, coupled with significantly higher product prices, and the legal issues and enforcement issues that have been raised today and previous to today will force many of our owners and associations to keep the current windows and doors, in many cases over 40 years old, decades-old products with compromised structural integrity and little or no light protection whatsoever. We ask the council to consider and reconsider the ordinance to go back to the .45 light transmitting issue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That's all I have signed up.
Is there anyone else in the chamber that wishes? Sharon?
Good morning.
Morning.
Just a second. I had a little too much coffee this morning, so I'm kind of like shaky. I don't know why. I'm just being honest. Okay, my name is Sharon Faircloth. I'm the owner of Holiday Water Sports on Fort Myers Beach. I'm here this morning to request the town council add a review of section 32-113 of the Sea Turtle Ordinance titled Beach Furniture and Obstructions. I sent an email already to each of you in regards to this request. And as I stated in my email, which I'm going to read a part of it, the new language to section 32-113 was added after the council meeting on January 21st of 2020. At exactly 3 hours, 3 minutes, and 53 seconds of that meeting, Vice Mayor Hossafras requested staff to add in language regarding beach furniture and equipment transport and jet ski transport. And to that request, Roger responded, "We will bring back some language." The language that Vice Mayor Hossafras requested can be found in Chapter 14, Section 14-78, Beach Furniture and Equipment Transport and Jet Ski Transport. So that was what was requested from the Vice Mayor, but the language that was actually added in is significantly different from that original request. The language that was added in part states no man-made objects can be left on the sand at night. This is no man-made objects, that's the pier and many residential homes, including beach furniture and such as that, are all included in that. So I believe this is unenforceable and it's very strict and way more strict than the current ordinance or the previous ordinance to which the language the Vice Mayor asked to be added into this ordinance. I hope that makes sense. I don't believe any of the affected property owners or vendors were aware that this new language was being added because there was no public comment at the meeting from any affected parties. No residential property owners, no commercial property owners, and no vendors had any idea that this language was going in. Furthermore, there was no discussion among any of the council members if you rewatch the meeting. So when the new language was added, there was no discussion amongst you. So I'm not sure that everyone clearly understood the effect that this would have on business owners and property owners on the beach. So we went to the vendors, went to the Marine Resources Task Force to ask that the language be revisited. We were told no review would be done. Although the mission statement of Marine Resources Task Force, which I have here, clearly states, in part states, the mission is to bring Estero Bay and its surrounding waters, including the Estero Island shoreline, to the point that they will continue to be the driving force of our economy, sustain the quality of life in cooperation with all whose livelihoods or lifestyles depend on the health of Estero Bay. Is my time up? Oh, okay.
Just wrap it up.
Okay. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, I'll just wrap it up. I would ask that you please just review that section. I think a task force maybe, or a group of affected parties needs to be involved so everyone can find a safe and cooperative area for us all to be able to live together. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on. Okay, the next item on the agenda is local achievements and recognitions. I'll start down on your end, Councilman Allers. Do you have anything this morning?
Nothing this week, sir.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I'd like to recognize a group that has been largely unrecognized on the island. There is a group of folks that does building for habitat during season. They operate out of Chapel by the Sea, but it's not limited to Chapel by the Sea members. They've been working for decades, assisting Habitat with building homes during the season. Their specialty has been vinyl siding, but this year they have also done soffits, installed doors and windows, vinyl floors, painting, and other general construction. This year they worked in Harlem Heights and Lehigh. And this year contributed over 500 hours of work to building homes for Habitat, completely uncompensated. I just think it's important that we start recognizing some of the folks that sometimes get under the radar here on the island. When I've mentioned this group, many people tell me they've never heard of them. And that's because they're humble folks who toil in an anonymity, but do a great deal of work that's very important for the community. And I thought it was time they were recognized.
Very good. Councilman Underhill.
I didn't have anything until the vice mayor made that comment. I did have the privilege, my wife and I had the privilege maybe a year, maybe 2 years ago to join that group for a day. I don't have any skills, but I went along and they were very kind to assist me and guide me. But I'm telling you what, they work really hard and we were worn out by the end of the day. And it's a very impressive group. And so I commend the vice mayor for recognizing that organization.
Very good. Council Veach.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago, there was, I was contacted through one of the outside agencies that I'm part of as liaison for the town council, that FGCU had their Eagle X Day. And the Eagle X Day is a day when the undergraduates present their research that they've been doing. And there were hundreds and hundreds of kids, everything from psychology to biology to engineering. And a lot of the projects they were working on were applicable to the water quality here on Fort Myers Beach. And it was one of those experiences where not only did I get a geek out and talk science to a lot of enthusiastic kids, but to be engaged with intelligent, enthusiastic young people gives you a sense of hope for the future.
Very good. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is advisory committees, items and reports. I think Barb Hill is here from CellCab. Barb? There you are.
Good morning, Mayor, members of council.
Good morning.
Barbara Hill, Chair of CellCab. And I'm happy to report this morning that there is greater attendance from visitors to both Mound House and Newton Beach Park due to newly implemented programs and events. This is a good sign. It bodes well for the future of both properties for the town. A visitor report by the Lee County Visitors and Convention Center Bureau stated that the Mound House was one of top 3 attractions in Lee County that had been most asked about, with more than 61,000 people surveyed from October to December 2021. CellCab reviewed strategic plan updates for both Newton Beach Park and Mound House. Status of both short and long-term goals show progress and our reaching stated timelines. CellCab recommends replacing the bocce ball court with 2 swing sets at Newton Beach Park, and to date have reviewed and discussed several design options. To increase visibility and bring more attention to Newton Beach Park as a historic site, we are looking to create a new entrance sign on Estero Boulevard. We're hoping that meets with staff and council approval. After review of the Mound House Museum programs and operating costs, we recommend that admission fees be increased by $5. This increase will be submitted to Town Council for approval for fiscal year 2023. I see from your agenda this morning that the council is working to merge several advisory boards, CellCab, BORCAB, and CRAB, into one. Since Allison Geeson's title is Director of Culture, Parks, and Recreation for the town of Fort Myers Beach, merging these 3 advisory boards makes great sense. It allows for more efficient planning for programs and staff for Newton Beach Park, Mound House, and Bay Oaks properties. This combined strategy will ensure that events and programs are well coordinated, that they complement each other, and that they do not compete. During our last CellCab meeting, I introduced this idea for feedback, and I'm happy to say initial consensus was positive. This is now on the CellCab agenda for our meeting later this month for discussion, vote, and recommendation to council. Serving as vice chair of BoardCab, I want to report that while merging advisory boards has not yet been discussed, it is on the agenda for tomorrow's meeting, May 3rd. May I suggest to council that you delay your decision until these advisory boards have had a chance to weigh in. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barb.
Before you take off there, Barb. Hey, Barbara? Before you take off. Now, John, didn't you say that this is one of those 2 meeting sessions to redo the name of MRF and the
Every
Commission?
ordinance requires 2 hearings.
So even if we decide to move it forward, it still won't really be decided until the meeting after.
And then I believe that's May 16th. And I believe our next CellCab meeting isn't until later. I'm not really quite sure about that. I think Allison, am I correct, Allison? So again, even after your second hearing, we won't have had an opportunity to discuss that.
Okay, well, we can adjust that date to make it work for you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Any other questions?
Barbara, I have a question. I want to put you on the spot, but I see since Allison's here, she could maybe back you up. But the modest increase in the admittance to the Mound House, I think that needs to be put in context to some of the surrounding attractions in the region, because Mound House is still a great value. And I just didn't know if you wanted to comment on that or if you wanted to yield to Allison to comment on that.
Actually, that's a very good point, and I think that has been carefully evaluated, but in terms of, the comparison in terms of cost, I'd like for Allison to come up and really sort of speak to that. Thank you.
Sorry, Allison. Guessing you could do it off the top of your head.
Allison Geeson, Director of Culture, Parks, and Recreation. So the value of the Mound House has been well vetted. With the review and fees that we're going to be submitting, there will be a full sheet of how it compares. Do you have a specific cultural organization you want me to
During
compare
the
to?
CellCab meeting, you gave a number of wonderful examples of how, in comparison, the Mound House remains a tremendous value compared to some of the surrounding attractions in Lee County. I just thought, I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that or you want to wait till the process unfolds.
Well, I don't want to give you incorrect information on fees, but as Barbara said, we did have a really great discussion about it, and I'll be glad to bring those numbers. We still are a very great value to this, and I will be glad to prepare that and submit that. I don't have that off the top
No, that's
of my
fine.
head.
That's totally fine. I thought that
Anything
was
else?
illustrative, though. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else?
And actually, Allison, since you're up, I think the fact that the Mound House was among the 3 top attractions in Lee County, that's with the Edison Ford Winter Estates, and which was the other one, the Shell?
It was a Ding Darling.
The Ding Darling, the Shell, the Ding Darling Refuge, and the Edison Estates, and the Mound House, the top 3 in Lee County. That's huge.
And it was the first time ever that the Mound House had sort of cracked into the top 3, I think.
Exactly. And we've only been open not even 5 years yet.
It'll be 6 years this year.
6 years, sorry. Well, you know how time goes. Thank you.
That is pretty impressive company.
Thank you, ladies. Okay, we'll keep moving on here. Our next item is, we have a proclamation today, and this is to proclaim Safe Boating Week here. So and we also have with us our past flotilla commander of the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary Flotilla 91, Nick Kaveski, and also our financial officer, their financial officer, Ted Lawwell, both here. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for being here. And I'll read the proclamation. This is a Town of Fort Myers Beach proclamation. Whereas the Town of Fort Myers Beach in Lee County, Florida, with its unique weather and water resources, offers special water-related recreational activities to its residents and people from around the world. And whereas this area's miles of saltwater tidal coastline, rivers, bays, and canals provide many of the needed outlets for recreation, relaxation, and whereas recreational boating is one of Florida's leading outdoor activities with more than 44,000 registered boats in Lee County alone, distinguishing Florida as, quote, the boating capital of the world. And whereas Every year, lives are lost in boating accidents in spite of the educational efforts of the United States Coast Guard, the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary, and the United States Power Squadrons, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, and local agencies. And whereas federal, state, and local agencies and private companies and groups have combined their efforts to reduce boating accidents by developing and executing safety training programs such as Boat Smart, Boat Safe, and You're in Command. And whereas the sponsors of these programs have focused their efforts toward youth and general public of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, urging them to enhance boating pleasure and avoid possible loss of life while reducing the loss of property and marine accidents. And whereas on average, 700 people die each year in boating-related accidents in the U.S., where cause of death was known. 75% of fatal boating accident victims drowned. Of those drowning victims with reported life jacket usage, 86% were not wearing a life jacket. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, proclaims May the 21st through the 27th, 2022, as Safe Boating Week, and urges all citizens to join in learning and practicing safe boating by wearing a life jacket, taking boating education courses, getting a vessel safety check, operating their vessels responsibly, safely, soberly, and obeying Coast Guard regulations. Given under my hand and the seal of the office of the mayor this second day of May 2022, Raymond P. Murphy, Mayor. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Would you like to come up here and come up and
Ted, come on up. I was actually going to mention Ted serves on our Anchorage Advisory Committee for the town as well, and so I'd like to
come on up
recognize
and
that.
come on up and grab? Yeah, you can go to each one, and you guys can just identify yourselves, and then
We always work together.
there you go. You're a good team. Good team.
I just have a brief message to
Go right ahead.
Honorable Mayor Ray Murphy, Honorable Vice Mayor Rexanne Hossafrost, and distinguished council members. We, the Coast Guard and the Coast Guard Auxiliary, are deeply honored to be invited to your town council meeting today to receive the 2022 Safe Boating Week proclamation. As you know, the objective of Safe Boating Week is to ensure citizens are aware of the need to be safe on and near the water. Thanks to you and your commitment and concerns, water safety is a reality in reducing the number of accidents and fatalities at our beaches and waterways. The U.S. Coast Guard and auxiliary marine safety work is ongoing throughout the year in Southwest Florida and across our nation. Together, the town of Fort Myers Beach and your Coast Guard and Coast Guard Auxiliary make a real difference in our community. We sincerely look forward to continuing our strong association with you now and the many years to come. And I believe Ted has a few comments.
Very shortly, I think we're very lucky as a town of having the Coast Guard stationed here with us. They've been very supportive of the town, and we continue to serve for boating safety with the town. Thank you.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Why don't you come on up? We'll take a picture of everybody here. Want to do that? Anybody have a camera? Okay. Camera? Who carries a camera? All right, here. Let's. Why don't you guys hold that, and then we'll get in behind you there. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. That's yours. Good. Have a great day. Thanks again. All right. The next item is the approval of the minutes for the April 18th, 2022 Town Council meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
I'll second.
Been moved and second. Discussion? Any objection? The motion carries unanimously. Okay, the next item is the aforementioned public hearing about the restructuring of the advisory committees. And this is ordinance 22-10, restructuring advisory committees. This is the first reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 22-10 entitled An Ordinance of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, amending section 2-94 qualifications and appointments of members of Article 4, boards, commissions, committees, and other agencies, Chapter 2 of the Code of Ordinances, Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, dissolving the Bay Oaks Recreational Campus Advisory Board, BORCAB, Community Resource Advisory Board, CRAB, and Cultural and Environmental Learning Center Advisory Board, CELCAB. Establishing a new advisory board to take over the functions of BORCAB, CRAB, and CELCAB, renaming the Marine Resource Task Force, MRTF, and providing for codification, conflicts, Scrivener's errors, severability, and an effective date. So we'll open this first public hearing and discuss this. Mr. Town Attorney, is there anything you want to?
No.
Open it up and discuss and.
This is on the agenda at the council's direction. Some time back, there was some discussion initially at an MMP to consolidate these committees into one. There wasn't a name given, so there's a blank in the proposed ordinance. As the drafter of the proposed ordinance, I tried to take what were the functions as listed in the existing ordinance regulations of the various boards and tried to consolidate them. But I'm simply the scrivener. If there's any modifications that you all wish to see or change a specific name to this committee, I know that Commissioner or Councilmember Veach has provided a handout to through the clerk, some suggested language. So it's up to you all as to what you wish for that section of the code to read going forward.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to delay ordinance 22-10 until our first meeting in June to give a chance for CELCAB and BORCAB to discuss some of this, maybe talk about the name. The importance of input from those committees, I think is very, very, very needed to move forward with this before we discuss it. I don't know that it would make the most sense to move this forward to a second reading until they've had a chance to at least discuss it and perhaps provide input on a name if they so choose.
I'll just jump in. Normally, I'm a big person who seconds motions, but my plan had been to suggest that we set it for second hearing on June 6th, and that way it would be past the time of the meetings, but we wouldn't be bumping up against our July break. So since the first meeting is, the first reading is just kind of ceremonial, I think it would take care of the problem. So
How's that sound, Councilman?
I will amend my motion.
You just drop it. All right, good enough.
And I've had conversations with the chairs and some people I know in the committee, and they've been informed, and the chairs have this suggested language that I have in for the committee. The name was just a placeholder. I don't have any,
You're not married.
ambitions to call the name, but I would like to, like you said, I would really like to have this driven by the committees. And I agree with the Vice Mayor that we can vote this on the first time and then set the date for the second one whenever the committees have a chance to review it.
Mr. Town Manager, you had your hand up?
Mr. Mayor, yes, I just want to make sure that you had the opportunity to advise the members of the council that there is a pending request from the audit committee to go from 7 to 5 members.
Yes.
And I don't know if you want to consider incorporating that in this discussion or not.
Well, we could, if it's the wish of the council. Does anybody?
I would just comment, and I don't want to step on your toes, Mr. Mayor, because I know you're the liaison to the audit committee, but I happened to bump into the chair of the audit committee the other day, as I often do, and he was very comfortable with reducing the number from 7 to 5, and this seems like a good place to do it, assuming that that's I again yield to the mayor as the liaison, assuming that's a good idea. But he was supportive of that move, but this seems like a nice place to do it.
My question would be to Mr. Herron. That seems like a significant change in the ordinance, so we might have to go back to Mr. Aller's motion to delay the whole thing.
He's checking now.
The
While you're checking, John, I know the audit committee is an actually statutory committee. There is no requirement in the statute to have 7, is there? I assume it could be 5 or 7.
It can be any designation. At this point in time, the title to the ordinance is related to the 4 that are mentioned in the title, doesn't include the audit committee. And so I would recommend or suggest that we can make that change between first and second reading, or an abundance of caution. Because a second reading would we would be noticing, and we'd be posting it in the newspaper and meeting the formal requirements of the of state law to make sure that the ordinance is properly noticed for second reading. An abundance of caution, you can defer it, and we can bring it back for first reading with the change to the title to include obviously the audit committee. That would be my suggestion, to be conservative.
So what that means is that at the second meeting in May, we could bring the audit committee in for first reading, and then theoretically on June 6th, whatever that date, I believe it's the 6th, we could have the second reading for both, for this one and the audit committee, if everyone's in agreement with that.
Or another thing I might suggest, we put them all together and then bring them forward on the 16th, on the second meeting. And then if the council is in agreement to start with the language that I drafted for clarity.
However you all want to proceed.
If I may, I'm looking through the ordinance, and I put the entire section 2-94 into the ordinance to give context to what we're doing here. And I'm looking at the language on audit committee, and it doesn't say in 2-94 how many members of the audit committee is supposed to have. That may have been done by resolution.
Oh,
And if done by resolution, then all we would have to do is amend the resolution, because I'm looking here and on page 20 of 186 in your agenda packet, and I don't see anywhere where it says what the number of membership of the audit committee is.
well, that's certainly worth looking into.
Well, in either case, if you could either hold this and do it as a package, or you could do this and we could address the audit committee on the second meeting in May. And if we have to have it as a companion item for June 6th, along with the second reading, if you wanted to move this along.
Yeah, if need be. That sounds good. Is that all right with everyone?
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion that we move this for second hearing for June 6th, 2022, assuming that that's what Mr. Herron is advising that we could do.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Did we want to have public comment first?
Yeah, you do need to open it up for
Yeah.
I'm just making the motion
before you vote.
yeah.
Okay,
I'll second the motion.
been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any objection?
Well, before you go, is it okay to insert the language that I had provided, as opposed to what John drafted? This is language that I've already discussed with the chairs of the committees.
I think it's up for grabs that things are going to be adjusted between the hearings. That's not the only thing that might be changed, since we might be changing other things as well. I don't think we specifically need to include that in the motion.
Just to get for clarity, whether it be clearer if we had that change in it now instead of putting it the last minute.
I haven't even had a chance to read it. to tell you the truth.
It's not putting it in at the last minute, because it's already been out there for the public to see as part of this public hearing today, I guess is the way I feel about it.
All right.
So my suggestion to Mr. Veach, who took time to draft this, as well as who just got it this morning, is that because we're asking the committees to share their opinion with us at the second reading, or before second reading, I guess, if they wanted to, they can look at the language as Mr. Veach says. He's shared it with the chair people. They can discuss it, and we could sort of consolidate the issue at the second reading, if that's okay with everybody, based on their review of language that's in the item on that was on the printed agenda, the item that he added, and we can then, at the second reading, take in whatever changes need to be made. John, would that be okay?
Yeah, the clerk has informed me that there is an ordinance 1806 that doesn't appear to have been codified, that does set all the boards at 7 members. So we would have to, if we want to reduce the number of any of the committees from that requirement of 7 to 5, we would have to bring that ordinance to you separately.
And just for public benefit, because it's legalese, codified just means it hasn't been published by Muni Code, right?
That is correct.
It was still effective.
It's still effective.
Okay,
Public comment?
did we vote on the motion?
We need public comment.
I know that, Vice Mayor.
You can't.
So if the desire is to modify the number of members of the audit committee from 7 to 5, we would do that by separate ordinance. Because there's a completely separate ordinance than what's in the book that's reflected in. So we would do that for first reading when the other one comes back for second reading.
No, John, just.
Or what?
Can we do this schedule? Can we do this? Assuming the council approves this one for first reading, my understanding is the second hearing date for the ordinance that's on the agenda would be June 6th, which gives us the second meeting in May to do the first reading of that ordinance.
That's correct. And we could theoretically do both for second reading on the June 6th. If we can get the notice in quick enough.
So with that reduction with the audit committee from 7 to 5, are you looking to reduce all of the committees from 7 to 5 since they were? No, because I'm thinking with this consolidation of all these committees, they might want to actually, conceivable, it could be increased, rather than decreased. But anyhow, all right, we'll open it up to public comment. Is anybody here, if you understand any of that, you're willing to make a comment? Seeing no brave hearts, I don't blame you. All right, we'll close the public comment. And is there a motion to move all this on?
I made the motion.
You did make the motion, okay.
Not a whole second.
Okay,
And I would just request that we make this language available to the committees to make their own, input on what language they would like.
That'll be provided to them.
any other discussion? Any objection? Motion carries unanimously. So we'll have give that to me again when this next hearing is going to be?
June 6th is what I put in my motion.
June 6th, okay, very good. Okay, the next item is ordinance 22-06, the Tuckaway Cafe CPD amendment.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Did we open it up for public comment?
Did.
All right, sorry. Trying to keep my notes here.
Councilman Allers has recused himself from this item here. So you're welcome to hang around, or you can go get breakfast, whatever you want to do. Okay, this is a second reading and public hearing for proposed ordinance 22-06 and an ordinance of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, replacing Town of Fort Myers Beach Resolution Number 12-07 and amending the schedule of uses for the commercial plan development zoning for the property located at 2301, 2307, and 2311 Estero Boulevard, and 111 and 121 Mango Street, Fort Myers Beach, amending the master concept plan for the restaurant uses, providing for revisions to conditions of approval and other clarifications as necessary, providing for conflicts of law, scrivener's errors, severability, and providing for an effective date. The public hearing is open. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, this item, as well as the following item, the proposed variance, are quasi-judicial nature. So before we start, if we can have anyone who's going to testify with respect to either this proposed ordinance 2206 and variance application VAR 2022-2021, please stand and be sworn in. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? The witnesses have been sworn in, and with respect to ordinance 2206, Tuckaway Cafe CPD amendment, at this point in time, it would be appropriate for the council to disclose any ex parte communications you had with regard to this matter.
Council Veach.
I'm familiar with the property.
Just frequent visitor.
I've had no contacts. Vice Mayor.
Frequent visitor.
Okay, Sarah, you want to start us off?
Good morning, Sarah Probst with Community Development. Trey and Amy Gillette, owners of 2301/2307 Estero Boulevard, also known as Tuckaway Cafe, are requesting an amendment to the existing commercial plan development zoning to allow brewing of beer for consumption on premises. The property is in the Boulevard Future Land Use District and is Zone CPD. The restaurant has had a 2 COP since 2017 with indoor seating between 7 a.m. and midnight and outdoor seating from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. The town has no record of any noise complaints from the restaurant. The applicant is seeking a CMBP license from the state. The license will allow for production and consumption on premises of up to 10,000 kegs of malt beverage annually. Brewing would occur interior to the existing restaurant footprint with no changes, with no other property changes proposed. Staff feels that the request meets the findings and conclusions found in section 34-88 of the LDC. There are no anticipated negative impacts as the current consumption on premises has generated no negative impacts that the town is aware of. The original CPD included 8 conditions and 11 deviations. Through the hearing process, 1 condition was deleted and 4 conditions were added. No changes were made to the deviations. The proposed conditions are on this, the proposed new conditions and deleted condition are on the screen. The applicant has also agreed to these conditions. At the April 18th council hearing, the second hearing was scheduled, and staff recommends that town council approve DCI 2021-0115 with the conditions to allow for brewing for consumption on premises.
Any questions for Sarah? Thank you very much. For the applicant, does anyone want to speak? Mr. Gillette.
Good morning. Trey Gillette, owner of Tuckaway Cafe, 2301 Estero Boulevard. We're applying for CMBP brew pub license to accompany our existing 2 COP license, which we've had since 2017. Just want to reiterate that we're going to be we're just adding this to what we're doing right now. We've been doing bagel and waffle sandwiches and coffee drinks and all that stuff for over 10 years now, and we have been selling beer and some wine products since 2017. But we're just going to add this little different thing to what we're doing now, and hopefully people will like it and we'll be successful. But just to reiterate, we're not going to be changing anything to speak of, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Any questions of Mr. Gillette? Guess not, Trey.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we'll bring it back to the council. Any discussion? Does anyone have a motion either to approve or deny this ordinance?
I'll make a motion to approve Ordinance 22-06.
I'll second.
Move. Yes, sir.
Just for the record, I know we had people come and speak, but they were the staff and the applicant. If we could open the public hearing.
I'm
close
sorry.
it.
I'm sorry. That's my fault. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak about this? Sir, come on up.
Ronald McLaren. As many board members said, they are frequent customers of Tuckaway. We are also, and I think it would be a great idea to go with this. Microbrewing seems to be the trend now in many restaurants, and this will give us an opportunity to belong to that trend also. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll close the public comment and go back to the motion. It's been moved and seconded to approve. Discussion? This does not call for a roll call, so
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
it does. It doesn't say so on my sheet. Okay. Councilman Veach.
Aye.
Councilman Adderholt.
Aye.
Vice Mayor.
Aye.
Mayor, aye. The motion carries unanimously 4-0. Okay.
See, Dan, you didn't need you as a swing vote.
If everything was as easy as beer down here on the beach, these meetings would move along a lot quicker. All right. Good luck, sir. The next item is variance 2022-0021, 292 Ohio Avenue, a pool setback. And this is to approve or deny with conditions of variance 2022-0021. Jesse Hallman, owner of the property at 292 Ohio Avenue, is seeking a 5-foot variance from the Land Development Code, Section 34-1174D1D, to allow an in-ground pool closer to a side yard property line than allowed for under current LDC requirements. Is there someone from the staff that's going to address it? Yes, sir.
Morning, sir. Jason Green, Community Development.
Morning.
The applicant has requested a variance to essentially the side yard setback. Oh, there we go. Sorry. I'll back that up. Requested a setback to the side yard setback. They've provided an updated site plan this past week after the LPA hearing, and I'll direct you to page, just had it. I believe it's page 68 of 186 of your packet, and we have larger copies if you want to see that. So the request to have a 6-foot variance to the approximately 11-foot setback. That 11-foot is determined based on the percentage of the recent changes in February to table 34-3. So that would be a variance of 6 feet from the 11-foot setback. The discussion at the LPA, which recommended approval unanimously on that, was related really to, I think, what's a confusing part to some people when they're developing pools. Where does that setback measurement begin from? And so what we've tried to explain is it's edge of water plus 18 inches. So that's what you'll see on that page 68, is they've provided essentially it's a 7.5-foot setback to the edge of water, but because it's edge of water plus 18 inches, it's 5 feet from that outside, I guess, coping edge, as we would call it. Staff had reviewed this and recommended denial based on the application and the information submitted by the applicant, that it did not meet the criteria and they did not provide documentation of that under section 34-87. Those items are found in your packet also, and it's also part of the application. And I can go through those individual items or those criteria if you'd like. However, based on the determination of not compliant with 34-87, staff recommended denial of that. Part of that was that there's significant room in the rear in different places, up to approximately 25 feet between the back of the property and the seawall. Admittedly, the applicant did mention at the LPA meeting that they believe there's tiebacks to that seawall. That was not part of the original application, so we did not have that to evaluate. However, that was what they presented to the LPA as part of their discussion. I'm sure they're going to present that today. So if you have any questions about that criteria, the 34-87, we can go through those individually or general discussion if you like.
I just have a general question, Jason. It's always impresses upon me when the LPA votes unanimously in support of something. I'm curious, with this additional information that's been submitted, does that give the staff any additional comfort?
Which additional information?
I thought you said they filed some additional plans and you learned some things since the LPA hearing.
No, so yes, so the site plan that was submitted was to reflect what the applicant felt the LPA stated. So the original application showed something else. This was to update in compliance with what they believe the LPA was showing to show you that picture. I don't know that there's any documented evidence of the tiebacks. There probably is. That would be a reasonable discussion to have. But other than that, I have not seen any evidence of that. So to answer your question, no, not at this point.
Okay, thank you.
So if there was some reasonable evidence to discuss, you'd be willing to look at that?
Sure, I think there's a consideration of there's a 25, like I said, there's 25 feet approximately between the back of the rear of the property, the building, and the seawall. And so depending on how far those go back, I think there's some room there. Could they fit a 10-foot pool back there also? I don't know. We don't have that information.
So that would be an alternative to the applicant then to.
Sure, they can present that information to you.
Take it back and resubmit, or if they want to, rather than go away with a denial today.
Well, that's just a recommendation from staff. You obviously have the ability to
Right.
consider that information, and they can present any of that information to you, and then you can take that into account for your decision.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Did you receive any objections from the neighbors?
I don't believe so, no.
You have questions for Mr. Green?
And just to highlight the point, when I mentioned the updated, it is page 70 in your packet was I believe the original application. And I think this goes to the vice mayor's comments that I've heard her say multiple times as we're continually trying to get more detailed site plans. And I'll just use this as an opportunity to point that out. You can see it's a box with a measurement. There's no description or detail of where's the pool's water edge, where's the outside edge of concrete, those sort of things. So that was part of the conversation with the client as we move towards this year.
Jason, quick question for you. So if I'm reading this right, currently they're asking for the 5 feet off the edge of the property line, correct?
Correct.
But in their application on page 72, it says that I am simply asking to adjust my side setback back to the original 7.5 feet. So do they want it to go to the 7.5 feet, or do they want it to go to the 5 feet? Because one thing contradicts the other.
Correct. I'll let the applicant discuss. I mean, their presentation included some conversation about 7.5 feet. And I think in the application, it talks about recent ordinance change to the percentage. However, what I mentioned at the LPA hearing was it was actually 10 feet February of 2021. So it's been over a year that it changed from 7.5 feet to 10 feet. It was just recently that it changed to the 15%. That only makes a change of a foot difference, basically. So the change from 7.5 to 10, that substantial change happened over a year ago. So that's why staff didn't take that into account, because it was misreading of what changed over the last year and a half. And I think most of the discussion, just if you watch that, it was about how wide the actual pool is. But when you deal with a variance, you have to deal with the specifics of what is the setback measurement, right? So whatever you're left over is the width of the pool. Now, whether that's sufficient enough for them, that's a different conversation. That's for them to talk to you about.
Okay, anything else from Mr. Green? We'll hear from the applicant then.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the council. For the record, my name is Beverly Grady with Retzel and Andrus, representing Jesse Holman in a variance from this side setback. And I would like to hand out our PowerPoint, and this is on, right?
Can be.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Beverly.
Thanks, Bev.
Counselor?
Thank you.
Good morning.
You want a microphone so you can stand there?
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Good morning. So yes, I would start by saying there has been.
Hang on, we got to turn you on. There you go.
Thank you. So yes, there has been, I became involved when it was scheduled for the LPA, not in the preparation of the initial variance application. Mr. Holman and John Colleen, who's next to him, has experience in construction, and the setback they were looking for was 7.5 feet to the water's edge originally. That's what they understood. That's what they were supposed to measure. So I wanted to make clear that we're requesting a variance from LDC 341174, accessory structures, D1D, for a setback of 6 feet from the side property line. And yes, there have been changes to your regulations. Ordinance 2201, adopted on February 7th, did change the rules by increasing side setbacks on small homes and small lots, as well as large lots and large homes. And Ordinance 2019 also changed the rules on side setbacks for principal structures. The LPA in this case recommended approval of a 6-foot side setback for this in-ground pool. Just briefly, we wanted to highlight that the legislative history of Ordinance 2201 started with an LPA hearing in November and was always advertised as minimum setbacks for large homes and lots. And the LPA recommended changing setbacks for these large residential structures. And the staff memos at that time recommended this is the best way to limit size of single-family homes along roadway. You're addressing massing. You're addressing additional setbacks and consolidated lots because that was a problem. And you were addressing front setbacks for residential structures over 65 feet in width. If you look at Ordinance 2019, again, that staff report in support of that ordinance change, which affected setbacks, was to resolve or improve some of the negative impacts from new development, which is occurring on Fort Myers Beach. Very tall homes are being constructed with little change in wall planes or articulation breakup massing. In some cases, this leads to walls up to 40 feet above grade, only 7.5 feet from the property line. These structures cause adjacent properties to be overshadowed. So that seemed to be the problem the council was facing in Fort Myers Beach, resulting in the adoption of these changes to the Land Development Code. I actually, in your packet, included a copy of Ordinance 20-19 Exhibit 1, which did change the staff report. It's just interesting to note that although that was adopted in January of 2020, it's actually not actually available if you buy the Land Development Code book. It is only listed along with all the ordinances that have been adopted since January 15th through your most recent as a separate ordinance that you actually have to look up individually and read to understand the change. And you will see the change to the site setback is not in the body of the ordinance, but is an attachment to that ordinance as Exhibit A. Just saying it's a little difficult for your citizens to find since you go to the website of the town, click on the Land Development Code, it takes you to Muni Code, and if you look at the matrix in the body of the ordinance, it still just has 7.5 feet for waterfront and non-waterfront. You have to go to all the ordinances you've adopted since January 15th, 2020, and there are many of them, and click them on individually, start to read those to understand the change into the Land Development Code, including these setbacks. But let's look at accessory setbacks. From my review of the record, I cannot find that that accessory setbacks were purposely intended to be changed. There was no change to accessory structure setbacks discussed in the staff memos, the LPA, or the council in the 2 different ordinances that have changed the side setbacks. Side setbacks are referenced to be the same setback as principal structures. But we would respectfully submit that accessory.
Beverly, just take a quick second and define accessory structures.
Oh, okay. Well, what I will say, it certainly includes a pool. A pool and pool deck are included as accessory structures. So that's a perfect example of an accessory structure. A detached shed could be an accessory structure, and they are defined in your code, and this qualifies as an accessory structure. We would respectfully submit accessory structures have not been the problem. Big, tall homes filling cubic space from side to side at a maximum height have been the problem identified by the council. So we would respectfully request you to look at this property. If you review 292 Ohio Avenue, you have a home that was built in 1950. Its square footage shown on the property appraiser site is 1,479 square feet. A very typical 1950s home that is typical to Fort Myers Beach. The lot size is 7,158 square feet, not a large lot. So it is your typical Fort Myers Beach single-family home, which fits appropriately into the neighborhood. And Exhibit 2 that I have attached in your packet shows you the LIPA printout so you can see the picture of the home. Now, I hope that you've actually driven to the site and seen the home on Ohio Avenue, because Mr. Holman has made an incredible investment to remodel. So the exterior has new roof, new siding. It's still the same size. He kept that 1950s size and feel of Fort Myers Beach. It is actually what we believe this council has been trying to protect through the revisions made to the ordinance. So my next chart is the variance criteria. There's 5 criteria for a variance. They're identified in your staff report. The LPA unanimously approved and found that we met the 5 criteria. Staff found in its report, it's the minimum variance, that it's not injurious to the neighborhood, and it's not more practical to amend the regulations. Where we disagreed with staff, but we appreciate the LPA's report, and that's what we're going to discuss. Are there any exceptional, extraordinary conditions to the lot or home? Or is it a place where rigid compliance is not necessary? We respectfully submit we meet in full that criteria. And secondly, are the actions the result of the applicant? Based upon the evidence and testimony given to the LPA, they found they are not actions of the applicant. And you've heard Mr. Green state that the pool could be placed in the rear yard. And we first saw that when the staff report was issued for the LPA. So there was never any insufficiency letter to be able to give that response, since that was a concern.
Beverly, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think you're cutting in and out again. I don't know.
Oh, on
You
the
did-
we're picking
Yeah,
it
you
up
can
on-
hear it. Oh, you are picking it up. Okay. It just, in here, you can hear it going in and out.
Okay. All right. I'll keep it here. All right. So let me just show you the neighborhood. This is the plat for Gulf Bay View subdivision as platted. And you'll see almost all the lots are rectangular shape except for the subject property and the lots around the cul-de-sac. This is a full cul-de-sac in this area. This carves out this cul-de-sac a substantial portion of what it should be, what is normally a typical rectangular lot. We believe that builds a case for making it a uniquely shaped lot. I have attached a copy of our most recent site plan, which is in compliance with LPA recommendation. So it does show a 6-foot setback. It shows the pool is 7.5 feet from water. As I said, when Mr. Holman filed the application, he was looking at 7.5 feet for water. So his number did not get him where he wanted to be. If you look at the site plan that was submitted with the application, it did show 7.5 feet from water. We're picking you up. Oh, okay, thanks. All right, so this site plan is in your packet, and I wanted to use this site plan to address alternative locations for the pool. So if you see This house is very much oriented to the side of the lot. Because of the cul-de-sac and effort to try to meet the street setback, they placed the house in the area where the cul-de-sac was not, so they had better compliance with the street setback, which left a huge side yard in excess of your typical design. If you look in the house, the doors are all oriented towards the side yard, which is why they want the pool in the side yard. It has the room. Looking to the rear, there is an 16 feet from the side, from the seawall. For the pool, that would leave you only 11 feet for the entire pool and the coping and the walkway around it. The only place there's any room is behind the carport. If you look at this site plan, you'll see this is the carport. And no one wants a pool. It is not reasonable and it's not functional to place the pool behind the carport. In addition, we will present testimony about the construction of the seawall and why that would impede the location of the rear yard as being a location for a pool.
Just a quick question. Does that function as a carport on the, it's not on the road side of the property?
No, no. I'll have Mr. Hallman explain what it is, but that's what is labeled on the site plan.
Thank you.
So what page is?
But it is not an area that is used for accessing the rear portion of the lot. We would respectfully submit that approving an in-ground pool and a side yard actually ensures the intent and purpose for your most recent ordinances, 20-19 and 2201. It maintains the view. In other words, he could build 2 stories, 11 feet of a house. That would be more massing. That would be a change in view. That would be a change in the frontage of the house. We have support by the neighbor, which Mr. Holman will testify to. So we would respectfully submit, by putting an in-ground pool, that actually accomplishes your purpose by ensuring, by making that investment, you're not going to be building structure within the setback, adding massing to the property, adding massing next door to the neighbor.
Let me get you to talk into that one. I'm sorry. Oh, we're having trouble back there. Sorry to break your stride.
Get to the same spot. Okay. So the uniquely shaped lot with the home placed more on one side left a large side yard, leaving open space for an in-ground pool. With this approval, it will maintain the openness when one could actually fill much of it with a principal structure. Also, if you look at the site plan for the pool and you take away 5 more feet, you'll see you will have a pool of 4 feet 6 inches. This pool, as shown on the site plan with the variance, is only 9 feet 6 inches in width. When we talked to the LPA, numbers got confusing, but what we were talking about was an 11-foot wide pool, and certainly the minimum of a 10-foot wide pool. We were only at 9 foot 6 inches, and if you add another, if you meet the setback, you're at 4 feet 6 inch wide pool. That's not a pool. So that alternative just is not available. So we believe this maintains openness when one could fill it with a principal structure. Thanks. We believe actually accessory structures should be encouraged, especially when they're at ground level in in-ground pools, because, and especially where the home built in the 50s is maintaining that same type of Fort Myers Beach style that you want to protect. The design of the existing layout placed this house on one side of a unique lot to achieve the street setback, and should be recognized that the in-ground pool preserves the origin and purpose of the ordinances amending height and setbacks. If you look at the, oh, that's good, you can leave it, yeah, that's great. If you look at the depth on the cul-de-sac side, the depth of this lot where the cul-de-sac is only 79 feet. That's a very limited depth, and that's based on the cul-de-sac. And it changes and usurps the rectangle shape, making this an extraordinary condition. John Colhane, who is here today, and owner Jesse Holman have spent untold hours, which they shared with the LPA, preparing all types of alternatives and designs. And we respectfully submit that this actually is a smaller pool than desired at 9 feet 6 inches, but this is the only truly available location based upon the seawall, its construction, and the existing deck in the rear of the property. LPA unanimously found all criteria for a variance met. I'm here to answer any questions, but we also have here the owner, Jesse Holman, and John Colhane, that are available to answer any questions. Oh,
Any questions for Mrs. Grady?
sorry,
This is,
Mark Lovington.
could Mr. Holman just come up and just tell us a little bit about who he is, and does he live on the island, and just give a little bit of background on his involvement in this?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and staff.
Morning.
Yes, my name is Jesse Holman. I reside at 292 Ohio Avenue. I bought the property approximately 2 years ago. I moved down from the Virginia Beach area. I retired. So I wanted warm weather all year round and still be on the water, which I am. Found this quaint little house down here. Love it. Tried to do some renovations. This didn't really work out. I was thinking about building a big home like everybody else in my neighborhood seems to be doing, slowly knocking it down, but I opted not to do that. So I restored my home, made it very nice and quaint. But the way the home is set up, that cul-de-sac kind of ate into my property, and everything's geared to the left side of the home. So there is an alternative for a pool back in the far right corner, but there's a garage door, and the setting would be, it's just not the perfect setting. Where I want the pool to be, it's conducive to outdoors entertainment, that I can go outside and I can enjoy it, not go out a garage door and jump into a pool. Plus, it will require extreme expense for me to cut these tiebacks back from the seawall. I wasn't planning on cutting these. I don't want to lose the integrity of the seawall. I want to keep the seawall the way it is with the tiebacks. Approximately, I would say, I don't have the research, but 10 to 15 feet back. And if I have to cut those, it's going to weaken the integrity and it's just not going to work out. But everything's designed, as you see in the plat, to the left side of the house, where there's a deck up above, which creates a deck down below, which would make a nice patio for the pool. And it's a small pool at that. And my neighbors, only one neighbor I have, is absolute in agreement with this.
And that's the neighbor that would be facing the pool or be next to the pool?
Correct, that's right.
And they're in support of it?
Absolutely, 100%.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to ask anything of Mr. Holman? No?
I
Okay.
I have a question. I believe this is what you submitted. It appears that your driveway, more than half of your driveway is in the right of way from these drawings? There's a
Yeah, there's a
circular
chunk of
line.
it. There's a chunk of it, correct. And that, again, I bought that property.
I know you
Yeah,
didn't do it,
I
but
didn't do it.
I'm trying to understand the drawing and I want to know where
Right,
the
the house
property
is-
line is, so I wanted to,
The house is very lopsided because of that cul-de-sac.
understood.
Yeah,
I'm not finding fault, I'm just trying
Right.
to understand the drawing, sir.
yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Actually,
Oh,
just
excuse me.
just
Yes,
real
sir.
quick for clarity of the numbers, because there's been a lot of numbers talked.
Yeah,
about.
there's tons of numbers.
And maybe for people that are listening, in your application, you asked, as I said earlier, that you just want it to be the 7.5 feet. Then it was 5 feet. Now in the drawing, it's showing 6 feet. So just for clarity, you want the setback to be 6 feet. So you're asking for 1.5 feet, or
Well,
would have been a foot.
here's how that worked. I hired an experienced pool contractor to come out, and I asked him simply, okay, can we put a pool here? And he says, yes, your setbacks are 7.5 feet. I'm a normal layperson. I didn't know about this 18 inches from water's edge have to go in, which makes it 6 foot variance now. Because I would have never, he would have told me straight up front, I'm sure, the engineer and the pool designer, that you can't get a pool in here because it doesn't meet the setbacks. But I did meet the setback of 7.5. So that's where it gets very confusing still to this day for myself.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, I can't see in here, maybe it's just not in mine, but when the town received your application,
They received it prior to the amendment change, which is even, makes this even worse for me, because the amendment change happened on February 7th of my records, and the permit was submitted the end of January.
that's what, according to your notes here, that it was designed for approval on March 2nd of 2022 and submitted for approval on March 2nd of 2022. But I don't see on here date received.
No, so I explained to the LPA the same thing, that his application spells out that the change from this past February is what the effect, and it's not. It's the change from over a year ago of going from 7.5 to 10. He did not realize that. And I guess his pool contractor didn't realize that that changed back in February 2021. So at the end of the day, it's still 6 feet from the property line is what they're requesting. So the amount of the variance is the only thing that changes. And whether that, I don't know if that matters to you or not, whether it's 11 or
I just wanna
or
support
10
you.
or, you know what I mean? So-
It's difficult when you don't know when you actually received it.
Right. So we received the application in March. He had started, so this has been a kind of a fast track project, but he had an application for a pool in, had rejection comments based on setbacks. And then that's where we started coming down this path.
I guess
Can I explain a little bit of that?
I just wanted to clarify something here. Mr. Allers keeps saying we can't tell when you got it. Do we timestamp things when they come in?
What are we talking about then we got what?
The application.
It was March, I believe 14th is when we received.
But what
the
I'm saying
variance.
is, I would like to see them timestamped when they come in, so that when they're copied and they come to us, we can tell the date on them. And this one doesn't appear that it was, so.
They're submitted electronically, but we can indicate the date and time that they're received prospectively for you.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking, just procedurally in the future, if we
Sure,
could
we'll
make
be
sure that
happy to do
happens.
So I don't know the date of
I think that's the point Mr. Allers was trying to make, and everybody was dancing around it.
I was getting to it, but
the permit was submitted prior to March. The application for the variance was, I believe it was March 14th.
Any other questions of Mr. Holman? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak for the applicant? Yes, sir. Come on up. There he is.
Good morning, everyone here. Mark Ludvigson, resident, also on Ohio Avenue, a few houses back. I've been responsible for a lot of the renovations on Jesse's home here. I also built the home right next to Jesse's house, which is, if it's affecting anybody, it would be affecting them. They happen to be my childhood best friends, and they have no objection to what we're looking for. I kind of get long here, and I'll try to be short, but it seems like we're behind the 8 ball since this started. In 2020, they had changed the requirements for quite a bit of stuff, and the architect that Jesse had hired at that time was from Texas, and we never got the application in 2020. We were going to raise this home up to an elevation of 15 feet. We were going to put a kitchen addition onto it, et cetera, et cetera. As time went on, the setbacks got changed. We were behind the 8 ball on every part of this. Some of it can be hours, some of it was days. But originally in 2020, we had a pool with the setbacks set at 7'6". We've gone through a lot of expense. We've been denied for setbacks that actually weren't being denied. We've resulted in getting an attorney because we were very nervous about how to defend what we're actually looking for. As you can see, everything has been, what is said and what is done happens to be two different things here. What we're actually looking for right here is the pool 7'6", with it 18 inches from what we understand is going to be the pavers. I didn't hear the gentleman's request or whatever earlier. I'm hard of hearing, especially with background noising, but there is no other alternative for the pool. To put the pool in the back of the home, we do have Deadman, Jack Kelly, who built the deck, the seawall and everything else like that, was a pool, was a dock builder, and tended to overbuild a little bit of stuff here, which he did. The Deadman, in order to put a pool in the back of the home, all these Deadmen would have to be cut out. And if you're not understanding what a Deadman is, it's basically rods holding the seawall up, enclosed with probably a 4 foot by 4 foot concrete just poured in there so as to hold the seawall back and stuff like that. We also have a deck above that, which if we got that close, we'd be breaking into the integrity of the deck above. Right now, we're looking for 3 foot off of the actual home, where, as you see, existing concrete deck. Well, there's the deck is above that, and all of them little squares there happen to be columns, which if we were to move this pool over, which was possibly suggested, we'd be taking the integrity out of them footings. So we've limited ourselves to basically is what he's going to be getting is a lap pool. And we'd love to have it bigger. This is what we're told LPA suggested, and we're willing to go with that.
Did I hear you right, saying these columns are supporting, it's an elevated concrete, existing concrete structure?
Excuse me?
Did you say that the columns, that the little square boxes that you talked about on that drawing that you supplied, it says existing concrete
Seawall.
existing concrete, okay. But you said those are.
That's existing concrete. That the house actually is above right here.
So
That
it's supporting.
7 foot is the deck, which actually is the square columns holding this. There's a 7 foot deck above, and then the home is above this. This right here would be his entertaining under weather. And this 7th, with the addition of that 7 foot deck. Right here is the columns holding up this existing deck, which is also holding up the roof structure. So it's
That's what I wanted to know.
load on it. We're looking for 3 foot of walkway in addition here, so as not to upset that structure. Any questions?
Yeah, any questions? No, thank you, Mark. Anyone else?
Yeah, we just have one clarification.
Okay.
Just to, because there was some question about how, some of the issues came to fruition, so.
Okay.
Just for clarification of the record, this plan is submitted by the applicant before he submitted for the variance, after the review comments on the permit. This is an alternative layout design that would meet setbacks according to staff. He asked about pool equipment and all that. This is in the rear yard. This is their design and resubmittal before the variance. So all the conversation of there's no options, there's no alternatives. They prepared an alternative and submitted it to us and then decided to go through the variance. I just want to make that part of the record. That's part of the email. I don't know if that has any bearing on your decision, but that's part of the confusion of this back and forth with the applicant.
That's fine.
So, thank you.
Thank you. You're all done? Mark, you have something else? Come on up to the microphone.
I'm not quite sure if this is actually showing the wood deck that happens to be right here, which sticks out 6 feet, which also has structural columns holding it up. So if this is representing that, we would actually have to take this deck off.
Well, that's sort of irrelevant at this point, isn't it? That,
I think that it is to the point that staff is saying that there's an alternate design that the applicant submitted, you know.
higher.
It would need a variance. So, you know, now they're saying, well, no, that's not what we meant.
Well, they've
and-
chosen to take this route.
Yeah,
So that's what-
they have.
that's what's
And
before us.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, I want to point out, you've heard a lot. And what I want you to focus, if I may, is that under your regulations, what you have before you is the variance application.
Yes.
And the variance criteria that's in the staff report is what you need to evaluate this application against. If you believe that the applicant has demonstrated that they meet that criteria, it would be appropriate for you all to grant the variance with whatever conditions you all deem appropriate. If you believe that they have not carried their burden, then it would be appropriate for you all to deny the variance.
All right.
Right, and just the reason we wanted you to have this was only for the purposes of you understanding that the idea of having to pull at a different location didn't pop up out of thin air, it popped up as a result of what they submitted to us.
Right, right. They had an option. They chose to go this way instead. Okay, Mr. Holman, you want a last comment here before we wrap this up?
Yes, members, last comment to clear up this situation. Again, I handled this myself and I was working with a member of a staff called Eli. I don't know, I have the email back here who said, hey, we cannot approve this. Can you give us an alternative? I, in no way, shape, or form thought that I was providing an example that it was going to be taken as a request to put it in the backyard. I was simply had my pool designer draw this drawing and submit it to Eli, not knowing it was going to go on record as submittal. That was not my intentions. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, we'll bring it back to the council, and I'm going to ask the council for, if there's any further discussion, we'll discuss it under a motion. So,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Looking for a motion?
Yes, I am. Hold on one second.
Public hearing.
Oh, public hearing, of course. I thought we heard from everybody. Is there anyone here that wishes to address this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment. Okay, Councilman Adderholt, do you want to present a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve approve variance 2022-0021 as approved by the LPA.
I'll second that.
I was under the understanding that the way they applied for the variance wasn't sufficient to get them what they wanted, and that what the LPA did was a different number, so I think we need to be specific about the number. Just for clarity, I don't want him to end up with less than what he needs.
That's a fair point. I welcome any additions to my motion that help clarify the situation.
If it helps, the discussion is about the amount, the setback from the side yard. So what the
Right,
LPA
but-
approved is what you see. It just meant the in-between
His
part was narrower.
application said one number, though, and the LPA said a different number.
Correct. And then the LPA discussion was because I think there was miscalculation of how much room is left between the house, the 3-foot walkway, and then that 6 feet. So they lost a foot in miscalculation there during the LPA meeting. So the question to them is 9.5 versus 10.5, I think, what your question is, correct?
I guess, Jason, what we need for clarity is what number is it that they really need to accomplish this that Mr. Adderholt could put into his motion? Is it 6 foot?
Yes.
I'll include the 6-foot number in my motion.
It would be a 6-foot setback, not a 6-foot intrusion.
No, well, so that's the question. Is it a variance of, right now, it's a variance of 5 feet for a setback of 6. Okay?
Forget about what we're giving up. The new line is 6 feet.
6 feet.
Is that correct?
That would be correct. And if they're okay with that, then that's.
Okay. So moved.
You'll amend your motion to include that?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll second that. Discussion?
Just for the public that's watching, now that this has been provided to us, it's public record, I'm sure Beverly has sent it in. It's page 11 that we're talking about as far as the numbers go.
Very good. Okay, any objection to the motion? The motion carries unanimously. Good luck with your project. All right. Okay, we'll move on to the administrative agenda. And the next item is Mulholland Stewardship Award. This is to select the recipient of the 2022 Mayor John Mulholland Stewardship Award. The MRF, as they're called at the moment, at their April 13th, 2022 meeting, recommended Cindy Johnson for the 2022 Mulholland Award by a vote of 5-0 with one member recused. I wonder who that was. If awarded, the recipient will be recognized at the June 6th Town Council meeting. So, Council, I didn't see any other recommendations. It seems to me, well, Bill, you're on that committee. Or
Yeah, and I'm
you're the
actually-
liaison.
I know the one who nominated Cindy. You know, everybody
Yes.
knows her. She is tireless and she does her research. And even if you don't agree with her all the time, you know that she's well prepared and she's a strong advocate for the environment.
No doubt, no doubt. So if there's no objection to this nomination, we'll move this forward to the the next meeting, I guess, the June 6th Town Council meeting.
Now this, I think we could approve this now and then we want to award it.
Right.
But I think that
Yeah.
Cindy will not be here on June 6th.
Oh,
If we can do this,
well, she can come in anytime and pick
can
up.
we do it the next meeting, which would be the 16th?
Why not?
We may or may not have a leaf for, so.
May or may not have what?
The leaf that you put on the.
Oh,
awards,
well,
right?
We can leave that for another day.
Very good. Ceremony, we'll have the ceremony. anyway.
Ceremony next,
Okay.
next meeting. Got it.
Okay. All right, very good. The next item is B, which is the purchase of an AC unit for Bay Oaks Rec Center. This is to authorize the award of a contract to Page Mechanical Group LLC to install a new AC unit for Bay Oaks Rec Center as the low, responsive, and responsible bidder in response to ITB-22-13-PR, quote, air conditioner replacement at Bay Oaks Rec Center Recreational Campus in the amount of $43,900, authorizing the town manager to execute the contract documents and expend fiscal year 22 budgeted capital funds on behalf of the town, and to waiver the DBE participation form, which is not required for this project. Is there a motion to authorize the award of the contract to Page Mechanical Group?
I'd move to authorize the award of the contract.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I have a question for Roger. Is this like the only air conditioner at Bay Oaks? Or is there multiple ones?
There are multiple ones.
Okay. There was one that was replaced not long ago, maybe 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, it's my understanding that because of the nature of the building being a vast open space, the demand on these, and with many doors, the demand on these air conditioners is really hard. It's like a hard environment, and consequently, their service life is less than you would typically expect.
Okay. Any objections to the motion? The motion carries unanimously. Next item is Resolution 22-18, FDOT Maintenance Agreement. This is to adopt Resolution 22-18, approving a maintenance agreement with FDOT for dinghy dock and features within the leased area under Matanzas Pass Bridge, and allowing for all associated documents to be executed by the town mayor and/or town manager or his designee. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
I make a motion to approve Resolution 22-18.
I'll second.
And second, any discussion? I'm just going to ask a question here, Roger, while we're on this subject of underneath the bridge. I was looking at the pictures of this, all that stuff that's pushed up against the, where the walkway onto the fishing pier used to be. And I'm curious as to if there's been any progress made in working with the state in rehabilitating that fishing pier, which I wanted to hopefully reopen.
We have pursued two avenues to try to address that issue. One is through FDOT for their analysis that they did in terms of what work needs to be done, the potential costs of that. And the second avenue is to discuss assuming that it does get repaired, the ongoing structural maintenance of that through Lee County, perhaps through an interlocal agreement. And we don't have answers from either party yet in a form that I could share with you.
But it's in the works.
We'll ask them again for the information.
Well, please do. I'd be very interested. That's I'd really like to see that accomplished. Okay, any further discussion on this motion? Any objection? The motion carries unanimously. The next item is a special event, Hands Across the Sand. The Sierra Club is requesting permission to hold an event in Times Square and on the beach, Hands Across the Sand. They are requesting a waiver of the permit fee. Is there a motion to approve this request?
So moved.
I'll second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion? What would the fee typically be on something like that, a permit like that?
Okay, that's fine. I was rereading the agenda this weekend. I knew you were going to ask me, but I didn't get a chance to get an answer this morning.
How about ballpark it for me? Just to get an idea.
I would say less than $1,000. It's probably a couple $100. I don't really know, but I could find out real quick. Could you do this, Patty? Just give me a minute. I'll get you an answer on that.
We're not involved with any litigation with the Sierra Group at the moment, are we? Thank you.
Check again to 2.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Motion carries unanimously. The next item is ordinance 21-03, Sea Turtle Conservation.
So, Mr. Mayor, as was alluded to earlier by some of the speakers on their public comments, the Marine Resources Task Force took a look at the requests that had come up at prior public comments and had a discussion of this ordinance and had some thoughts about what the council could consider doing. And before we go through the actual filing of a potential ordinance change, we wanted to give you an opportunity to discuss it. Typically, we would have put this on a management and planning session, but we wanted to make sure that the public had an opportunity to share their thoughts with you, which they did this morning. So that's why it's on the agenda as an administrative item and not on the M&P as you would typically expect.
Okay. So we're just reviewing this today. Is that the idea?
Well, it's a chance for you to give us any direction. You could obviously not make any change is always an option. You could make a change. You could make a change based on Marine Resource Task Force recommendation. We looked to the experience we had with respect to the short-term rental regulations where numerous condos said to us, rather than have the town enforce on a unit-by-unit basis, let us be responsible for compliance within our units, within our buildings. And we utilize that strategy for that particular issue with some of them. So we just offered that as perhaps another alternative way to deal with this issue.
Okay.
I'm finding this is a little confusing in its presentation because it's on a town council meeting and it's in the form of an ordinance. Normally, we have a public hearing, and I just want to clarify, we're not having a public hearing on this ordinance. We're having a discussion based on the fact that Murph recommended to us a 1-year moratorium basic. I don't want to use the word moratorium because that has a legal definition, but
Implementation
a
schedule.
1-year delay in implementation. So what we're really not discussing a new ordinance. What we're discussing is whether to accept the recommendation of the Murph Committee. But the fact that we've got an ordinance attached to this, I think, gives a different impression to folks.
The idea is so that you could see the entire ordinance and yes.
I understand that, but I'm just trying to clarify for everyone who's sitting out there is that we're not looking at a passage of an ordinance today. We're looking at
Purely
land-
discussion.
Nor first reading.
Correct.
Purely discussion.
Right. And for the record, I guess I'm I am pleased with the recommendations of the MRF committee for a delay while we look at things. Seems to be a reasonable request.
Let me just remind you that Murph said, with a caveat there, that there would be increased enforcement.
I agree with that as well. I agree with the entire MRF recommendation.
I had a question for Chad. Now, some time ago, probably it was a good year or so ago, the town council allocated money for a spectrum analyzer. Now, was that for specifically looking at the light color, or is it also used in determining lighting violations generally?
Hey, morning, Chad Schutz, environmental staff. So the spectrometer, it's to ensure compliance with the code. The code requires long wavelength lights. The only way you can do that is with the spectrometer. I don't see myself going up to lights at night on private property close to people's houses. I do use them on permit compliance to make sure that the bulbs they are installing are not just yellow painted bulbs, they are proper amber or red bulbs.
Now, is this a useful tool for determining whether there's light violation from interior lights and related to a disorientation?
For the spectrometer, I don't think so. It's a little bit limited because of the proximity it needs to be to the light, et cetera. So I think you'll find that most interior lights are going to be emitting less than long wavelength spectrum light. So I don't really see it as a tool that you would use in enforcing interior light issues or compliance.
So then for your determination whether there's light violations, should it be visual, or do you also put is it too dim to use a light meter?
It's visual. That's what the Florida Association of Compliance Code Enforcement recommended in the Sea Turtle Conservancy sponsored lighting workshop for code enforcement officers is your eyesight. Is it visible from the beach?
And if you have a disorientation or event that you're looking at making a citation, if there's a condo and there's 3 apartments with, or 3 condos with their lights on, and the turtles disorient and go towards that building, are all 3 of them in violation?
So I rely a lot on the FWC Marine Turtle permit holder. They're out there in the mornings. They see the lights that may or may not still be on. They see the direction of the turtle tracks and where they're going, where they're orienting towards, whether that's a building or a street light or the ocean.
So in the case of like a disorientation, the turtles are your sensor.
Yep, proof's in the pudding. Where their tracks are going, they're orienting towards either a light that's either too intense and or short wavelength that they're more sensitive to.
And if you issued any violations for any lighting violations that did not result in disorientations?
Yes.
How often do you do that?
I don't have a number for you. Often send out a lot of warnings, send out a lot of emails, try and work with people to get into compliance.
But I think, Counselor, your question of a citation is different from, we send a lot, as Chad said, information to people, a letter saying, sort of a warning letter. It says notice of violation, but it's really a warning letter. So that's very different from an actual, you drove through the stop sign, here's your ticket. So I just want to be clear that while there may be numerous pieces of correspondence coming from the town towards a particular property to try to address the issue, not all of them are a violation or what you would call in a civil type, criminal type of thing, notice to appear in front of the magistrate. They're just telling you, please don't repeat this act. Please look into what's causing this. Please address what's causing this. That type of correspondence. Please fix what's causing this within X number of days.
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor, as somebody who's blessed with living on the beach in a condo, I feel like I have an obligation and a responsibility to live in concert with the surrounding marine life. Totally respect what turtle time and those who are trying to protect the turtles are trying to do. I'm concerned that the ordinance as written currently, with moving it to, in essence, 15% from 45%, which, by the way, I was under the impression we were doing that because the state was requiring it, and it's come to find out that that's just a recommendation from one of the state agencies. So I'd like to see us pass an ordinance that goes back to 45% and keeps it at 45%. And the reason why I say that is because this process of requiring 15% for everyone, in essence, assumes that everyone who lives along the beach is a bad actor and needs to be punished. And I think that's a wrong approach for government. I think we ought to assume that people who live along the beach are good actors who wish to protect the turtle population and wish to do well. And I think it's sort of like when you're in school and somebody misbehaves in class and the teacher punishes the whole class when just one student is disruptive. I would prefer a situation where, and let me just say to my Turtle Time friends, I acknowledge that the problem is real and it exists. I just got an email yesterday from the new Mulholland Award winner, Cindy Johnson, with pictures of a lot of the condos, including my building, with a lot of violations. And so I think the answer, and I might differ with some of my condo friends on this, but I think we ought to have tougher enforcement. If we're gonna insist upon 45%, and my turtle friends say that 45% is ineffective. It's only ineffective if you don't close your blinds and you don't close your shades. We had special shades installed that cover the whole windows. We now set a timer. We're very diligent. And quite honestly, I think we have an obligation to do that. I have no problem doing that. So I think it'd be more appropriate and probably more effective if we build upon the goodwill that currently exists in our community to support protecting the turtles by going after the bad actors, those folks who, for whatever reason, are insistent upon not complying. And a lot of it's, I'm sure, accidental, but there are folks there who are renting and whatever, and maybe it's an education issue. But I can tell you in my building, when Chad comes around and shows some pictures, that gets everybody's attention. And Chad and the town has been very patient with everybody and trying to educate and so forth. But if the fines start coming out, I think the compliance will skyrocket upward. And I think that will have a positive effect. And I think that's fair. But I think it's only fair if we could keep the 45%, because the 45% assumes goodwill of your citizenry. And I think that's important. And I would support that change in the ordinance.
Chad, you want to come back up for a minute? I got a couple questions for you. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm going to do it anyhow. It was not intimated. It was flat out said earlier in this meeting by some speakers that you only inspect the condominiums, or the majority of your efforts is at the condominiums without inspecting the other people on the beach, as far as the businesses and the hotels and the motels and the bars and the restaurants and so forth and so on. I'm going to give you a chance to defend yourself for the record and tell us how your enforcement works.
So Chad Schutz, for the record, I would have a hard time enforcing any ordinance if I didn't do it equally across the board, so up and down the beach.
So you make your rounds up and down the beach, and if it's the outrigger or the Wyndham or somewhere, some single family house up the other end of the island or down the south end?
North, central, and south, yes, sir.
Okay. All right, that's
Mr.
that.
Mayor,
That's that.
just to further amplify that point.
Don't go away, Chad. I want to ask you something.
When we are dealing with the commercial properties, whether, it's Neil at Diamond Head or the family who owns Lonnie Kai or the other, we have that relationship with them, and we talk to them. Chad does a pre-season review of their lighting, gives them information about what they need to address, if they need to address stuff and all that. We do the same things with condos, and I'm very sympathetic to the situation with condos. But as I all said, I think most of the speakers said, they have a lot of turnover in terms of their rental units there, and they're getting a lot of different people in there. And while they try to educate, you also have a lot of people whose attitude is, I'm on vacation and I'm going to leave the lights on, I'm going to leave the water running, I'm paying a fee, and they're not necessarily always good environmental stewards. So My point is that we try to work with the property managers, we try to work with the property owners, and it's easier when we're dealing with, a stable situation versus where we have a lot of turnover.
Okay, Chad, I happen to agree with a lot of Councilman Adderhalt's comments here, particularly in regards to the 15 versus the 45%. But you can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. You can't insist on the higher percentage and also demand less enforcement. I mean, you have to, if you want to have that higher one, you have to have, not only, you have to have compliance and enforcement. In other words, you have to continue doing what you need to do, and the condo owners and, or other buildings, hotels, motels, and so forth, I happen to agree that they should have their own internal plan as to handle it, how to handle their own property. They don't need us to telling them how to handle their own property. We just need to see the end result, right? So I think that's the way it should move forward, in my opinion. But you can't have it both ways. You can't not have the particular glass, or have the particular glass you want and still insist on less enforcement too. Now, my next question to you, Chad, is if this in fact happens, where it's going to require more enforcement, can you handle this whole thing by yourself, or do you need help in doing it?
I can handle it. I mean, we did a pretty hard run in 2020 and got things in line, and I think we've been coasting a little bit with everything that's been happening in the world, but.
So you can swing this whole island by yourself and be able to enforce?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
And I think part of that, would be willingness to find people without a disorientation.
Well, you know what? Enforcement is enforcement. You have to, just because you don't, if you say you're not going to enforce it, and then, then all of a sudden there is a disorientation, well, what good was it? What good was it if, without the lack of?
And just for the record, I agree with that as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like having a, traffic law that you only write a ticket when there's an accident.
Mr. Mayor, if I
Yes, sir.
kind of get a little worried when we talk so much about enforcement and writing violations and get away from the education part of it. There are a lot of people that come, you find yourself when we talk about things like this, at least I do, that you realize you do things that you don't normally notice that you do. For instance, regarding the tinting, my truck that I have now is very darker tinted than the truck that I had before. So at night, I find myself putting the window down to be able to see oncoming cars because I can see them better because the windows are so tinted. And I fear that a deeper tint like this may have that effect. I think they raise very good, valid points. If I'm on vacation and I came to pay to look at the Gulf and look at the settlement of the sun and everything like that, if I can't see it, I'm going to open that window, not knowing that I'm doing something completely that I shouldn't do. So I worry a little bit about that. I also think that the condo associations have done a very good job, at least in my talking to most of them, in trying to self-educate their owners in what they need to do. Councilor Adderholt made a very good suggestion that there's blinds out there, the technology's there, that you can very easily do things through your phone on an app that can send shades or shutters or anything, close them at a certain time that you only have control of, that your guests don't have control of. So there's other ways to do it. I think we spend a lot of time discussing and protecting, as we should, both legally and humanly, the turtles, but we forget about the other species that we're here representing as well. The people that own these buildings, the people that come and visit, the people that invest their livelihoods in this place. I think we owe it to them to be as fair. I think the state has done a very good job of telling municipalities what is acceptable. I think we owe it to the people of this island as well as to the turtles to do the best we can to stay in line with them. I would be in favor of looking at this again, going back to the 45% versus the 15%. I think that there's there's continued education that can be there, whether it's working with the condos associations as to what they can do, speaking with Chad. I'm sure Chad's always talking to him anyway, providing options. I'm not opposed to the condos having some sort of responsibility to make sure that their residents have the best knowledge that they can to make the best decisions to protect the turtles. But I think in this case, we got it wrong and we need to correct it.
You know, I agree with your education point, but that's ongoing. I mean, that's happening already. That's happening now, and it's been happening every year since God knows how long. But that's where the portion of the condo associations and the other buildings themselves, not just the condos, but also the hotels and the motels and so forth, where they have their own programs whereby they're educating their people when they come in. And we don't have to be involved in that. I mean, they can set up their own programs and have their own, but it's the end result that everybody's after, you know, and then the accountability that's associated with that.
I have a couple questions for Roger, if you, or Chad. One of the questions that was brought up in my mind when they were talking is how do we let them know if there's a violation or potential violation? Is it through email? Is it through just a letter? Is it, because I've spoken to several people that have received a warning or a citation out of a property that wasn't theirs. So what's the fastest way we can get to the condo association boards that one of their homeowners is potentially violating or is violating what we need them to do?
So to your question, how do we notify them? If I have an email or a phone number, either that night, if they've given me permission to call them later on in the night, or the next day I'll be emailing and or calling them. If I don't have a direct contact, then it would be a warning letter through the mail.
And we actually sometimes even go there and try to post one if we can, so it'll be the next morning if we can.
I'm just trying to think outside the box and perhaps working with the condo associations, if it's okay with however they go through their process of getting things approved, they can provide phone numbers for every unit that to the town. So if you haven't, I'm just trying to get to a point where we can address the situation faster so that it doesn't continue to go on without being corrected as fast as possible.
Sure, unit by unit, it's difficult. You're at night, you're trying to sort out a building map.
Sure.
And trying to figure out which room is which owner is who.
But I guess what I'm saying is if you take the picture, you may not know what building is what, but if you supply the condo association with that picture, they'll know.
Absolutely.
And they can put you in contact with that person very quickly, or they can contact that person.
Councilor Allers is somebody who, when I was on the condo board, Chad did send some pictures to our condo association. We had to then, because it's impossible for Chad to know exactly what the unit number is, we had to sort of hunt down internally which lights belong to which unit, and then reach out to those owners and educate them. And again, I think Chad's been pretty patient. The town's been pretty patient with folks, but just looking at the pictures last night that Cindy sent, we still have some challenges out there, and we need. And I tell you what, when again, town's been very patient with us, but when the fines start coming out, and I think at some point they need to come out, because that's what really gets some folks' attention. Most of the people in our building are extremely sensitive to this issue, really trying to be compliant, really on it. But we get a few folks that they're either rental units or they just don't care. But I tell you what, a fine will get their attention. It has to be handled appropriately. So I have no issues with the enforcement piece. This 15% glass, I mean, one of the condo presidents was here a few weeks ago, and it passed around a sample of this 15% glass. And I think we all held it in our hands, held it up to the light. I mean, it's extreme, and maybe technology changes that over the next few years. Maybe technology gets to the point where you can see out fine, but it doesn't affect the light. Somehow the light is blocked. I don't know. But right now, that 15% option is really draconian and really would affect the quality of life of condo owners and anybody who lives along the beach there. That view is spectacular. It's a 365-day a year view. And again, as Councilor Allers said, there are systems now, which we've gotten. We've got a blind system that covers all the windows. It's electronic. You can put timers installed. If you want to use traditional shades, that's fine, and just close them. You got to set a little alarm on your phone or on your clock. It's just part of living on the beach. It's an obligation and a responsibility, which I gladly embrace. But at the same time, this 15% glass, at least the way the technology is now, really would adversely affect quality of life for the folks who live on that beach.
I have a good question for you, Jim. Have you been in a condo that has a 15% glass?
All I have seen is that sample that I can just quite be honest with you.
And I tell you, I think the sample pasture on indoor is just not an accurate. You talk to Councilman Allers, when he's in his truck in the day, is the tinting a problem? Because that's what we're looking at. What is it like in the day? I have seen 45% glass next to completely clear glass, and the difference is almost trivial. It doesn't look like has half the light coming in. It's a slight tint. And so when you're sitting in that, it's like being inside with tinted windows as opposed to being outside trying to look at it. So the idea that 15% glass means sitting in the dark, I just don't think is an accurate portrayal.
Well, I didn't say sitting in the dark, but it's like
some of the speakers.
it's like wearing Ray-Bans inside. I mean, it's pretty dramatic. Now, if you have a sample that you want to bring that would change my mind, I'd be open to look at it. If the technology that we saw the other day is incorrect, I'd be happy to keep an open mind on it. But all I know is what was handed to me, and that was about a half-inch thick at least, and it was extremely dark. But again, if there's other examples, Councilor Veach, I'd be happy to look at it.
Like I said, the proof to me would be to go into a unit that has 15% glass on a sunny day and see what it looks like. Because that's the only, because I think that the piece of glass, even the piece of glass that was passed around, it had a number that made me think it was 9%, but it wasn't 15% on the table of that. So, and maybe when they said 15%, they said at least, or, the most light that gets through is 15%. But I will talk, the speaker said, one is they talked admirably about Broward County and the way they handle it. The people that were on one of the places on the East Coast, and I think it was Broward County, the organization that was managing these nests and the corralling all the baby turtles and getting them into the water, they lost their permit. They lost their permit because it is just not a good way to do things. They were there and they were allowing light violations because they were taking such a heavy hand and getting the turtles into the water in an unnatural way. Education, Murph, Turtle Time, they've been trying everything to educate people, but when people come in for a week at a time, it's such a moving target. It's almost impossible. They put signs on light switches. They put signs on, they have a sticker you can put on the glass, but some people just don't care. Now, when you have a condo, condos are unique because if you have a timeshare or you have a resort, you have a single authority that is taking care of that. If they decide that it's worth putting the 15% glass in the entire thing because they're getting a lot of violations and not controlling the people that are staying there, that one entity can do it. With a condo, you have multiple different owners. It's also cumulative. So my house, I have so many lights on the beach. But if you have a condo, you could have 5 times that many lights. And it's a cumulative effect. So it only takes so many of those lights to cause this problem. I think that a lot of the speakers, except one, and I'll point out, a lot of these are saying either, I think, hyperbole or just in a way to make it as easy as possible for them, saying they also want enforcement in a way which is more difficult to enforce. But the one speaker who said something that I thought was really honed to me is that if we put a moratorium for a year for the 15% glass, then that may encourage people to change their decades-old glass, which is not safe and not tinted, to move towards 45% glass in a year. If we just make it open, then there won't be any sense of urgency. You won't get any conversions at all. But the problem with it is if you put the 45% glass in, it's going to be there for decades. And if it isn't solving the problem, when I put 45% glass in my house that I had to by law, I asked, does this mean I can have my lights on at night with the blinds open? They go, no. And I was like, well, then what good does it do?
Well, it does a lot of good if you close your blinds.
If you close your blinds, it doesn't matter what glass you have.
That's exactly right. And so therefore we've got to enforce the ordinance and we've done a wonderful job of educating for the last couple of years, but now's the time push has come to shove. You said, I think it's clearly been put before, the challenge has been put forward to property owners, respect the marine life and comply with the ordinance, or we're going to go to 15%. I think you see it. I've sensed a willingness today where folks are trying to figure out a way to comply. And if you do it, you can do it under 45% if people just close their blinds and they're respectful of the ordinance. And my sense is a lot of people want to do that, or most people do.
But yeah, the problem is,
Could I jump in? Just so that the folks sitting out there that are from the condos and elsewhere realize that we've made a lot of references to an email that we got that you guys haven't been able to see. And I have to say that it was really disappointing because the condo folks are coming to us and saying, please give us this grace period, or please do something about this. And yet at the very moment when I would think this at the top of your mindset, that you would be paying attention to it, we got photographs of 9 different condos that were violating the lights now that season has started. So you make it difficult for us when we're having this very active discussion right now, and it should be at the top of your minds that your condos are still violating even while we're discussing this. So I just wanted you to understand what email we got and what's going on, and ask you that maybe you start going out onto the beach and looking up at your condo at night and seeing, if your neighbor happens to have their lights on, that you might even go to the point of knocking on their door and doing some education. I wanted you to understand what it was that we had gotten in the mail was that email. And the other thing I'd like to say is, I think that we have an agreement about where we're going today, and today is not the day where we're deciding whether this is 15 or 45%. So what I'd like to do is make a motion that we implement the recommendations from the Marine Resources Task Force, which is the 1-year delay of implementation and the stricter enforcement. So I'm putting that motion out there for a possible second.
Is there a second to the motion? You're not gonna,
Okay,
you're
I
not
guess
gonna.
I was wrong.
I'll second it for
I
discussion.
was gonna say,
Yeah, second for
okay,
discussion.
it's been seconded. Discuss. Go ahead, Bill, discuss.
Well, is when I look at the stats and I look at what both from the Chad provided from the state that's in our packet and what I got from Turtle Time, 2/3 of the lighting violations or disorientations were caused by condos. And more than half of those condo violations were for interior lights. So as we're doing right now, we want to say what we're doing is fine. We have this number. And the idea that the numbers are going down, I mean, they talk about 6 nests disoriented. That's approximately 600 endangered hatchlings that go the wrong way to their death. It's not,
I guess,
not trivial.
Bill, if you are not in agreement with the motion, what is it that you want to do?
I said I second it for discussion.
Right, but
Or else it
you said for discussion. What is it that you actually want to do, though? Do you agree with the motion, or were you really just seconding it for discussion?
No, I was seconding it for discussion. And as you
So what
seconded
is it
I
that
said
you-
for discussion, doesn't mean necessarily agree, doesn't mean necessarily going to vote.
Right, so my question to you is, if you may not agree with the motion, what is it that you want to do?
You have an alternative.
Yes.
There are a couple alternatives, okay? And one would be to keep 15% glass. The second would be to expand on the idea of putting the responsibility on the condo associations to come up with the management plan. The implication to there is that there's got to be some teeth within that condo association. So if there are repeated violations from someone who is renting out their place, who can't manage the renters, that some actions taken on the condo association. Could be anything from forcing them to put in 15% glass if they've proven that they can't manage their rentals.
Counselor, if you just for
I'm
clarification.
still as confused as I was when I asked the question.
Well, I just want to ask for clarification on that last point you just made, which I'm not sure I disagree with. Would that be allowing the 45% glass with that enforcement regimen?
If the enforcement had enough teeth, where it meant that, because there's, I'm sure most of the people in the condos, like you said, are conscientious, but there's people who maybe have bought the thing to rent, never been there, or you've rarely been there. And if they if it is a small minority of these owners who are causing the problem, then coming up with a management plan that has teeth, that would maybe force people to, go through a couple of steps. Maybe you have to put in automatic blinds. If that doesn't work, maybe they have to put in 15% glass in a way where we can make sure that those outliers are brought into compliance.
I'm certainly open for further discussion on that, but I guess my concern would be the difference. What I would do with the vice mayor's motion is that I think the 1-year hiatus on the 15% glass is not going to solve the problem, because we're going to be right back here again 1 year from now having the same conversation. I would like to comply with the state guidelines right now at 45%, keep them at 45%, and also then consider all the additional enforcement and education options that we've discussed today.
The MRF recommendation has 1-year periods of extension that are possible in it.
Right, but this concept of coming back every year and having this fight all over again troubles me, I guess. That's all I'm trying to say. It seems kind of like a lot of an exercise in futility when we know what the problem is and how to address it. But you know,
I guess the reason I like that is that it keeps the pressure on for us to be coming up with plans or whatever it is that we want to do.
yeah, that's fair. I think, but in order to get that 45%, I think we ought to have some tough enforcement, a tough enforcement piece to it. But I'm open for suggestions.
I think I'm trying to understand, from what I'm hearing from everybody that speaks, is the issue is the bad eggs or the people that don't comply with what we currently have. So is it safe to say that those same people aren't going to comply even if you do change it to 15%?
They will if they get a nice little fine at their door. Yeah.
Well, I get that, but I mean, everybody, going back to what Councilor Veach said earlier, everybody perceives light a little bit differently. How I see things through my windshield is different than how you may see it through yours, depending on how your eyes react to light. I'm not an optometrist, but I know I see things differently than my wife does. That's a whole nother story. But
It's not how we see it, it's how the turtle sees it.
well, my fear is that when you go with something darker, the first thing you do when you walk into a dark room is you turn a light on. So if you're going to make the inside of these condos or any business, whatever it is, darker, the first thing someone's going to do is turn on more lights, or they're going to open a door to get more ambient light in. It's just natural reaction. So I think by trying to change something, we're creating the same problem that we're already dealing with. I'm 100% in support of keeping it at the 45%. I think that it works as long as people are willing to put in the work to make it work. So to just change it, because it benefits or potentially could benefit one specific side isn't the right way to go about it. I think we need to continue to educate with people. I think, whether if it's more enforcement, that's fine. But I think you got to work with them. I think that they've shown that they're trying to be very good stewards over the years to make the turtles as safe as possible. Everybody's trying to do everything they can, but there becomes a point where you have to use some common sense, in my opinion. And we shouldn't be changing this to the 15%. It just doesn't, I don't believe it's going to solve anything except for create the same discussion a year from now that people aren't following the rule of the 15% that's been installed.
I think the motion accomplishes what it is you're asking for. It's saying we already have the 15%. It's saying we're not going to enforce the 15%. And it says that we are going to do tougher enforcement, which you said if there are bad eggs, we need to be getting those people in line. So I think the motion accomplishes all of the things that you said that you were hoping to accomplish.
Except for the fact that I don't agree with the 15%.
Well, and
At all.
but the 15% is in effect right now. My motion is delaying implementation of that so that we have time to look at all of those things, study the supply, the cost, all of those things.
Well, I can
So-
support that as long as this is going to come back for us to discuss it again to potentially.
Come back in a year.
That is my intent, that it would
Does
come.
it have to take a year, I guess? I
No.
mean,
It doesn't have to take a year.
by
Oh,
saying
it
it's a
doesn't have
year,
to, but it has that outside,
it doesn't solve the issue that I believe the condo associations are having when they're stuck and we're trying to replace our 40-year-old windows. We don't know if in a year it's going to be this or it's going to be that. I think we need to give them clear direction that this is what it's going to be so they can move forward to upgrade what they need to upgrade to be even more compliance than what they are now.
But, okay, a couple of things there I think are a little bit maybe not accurate to the point. If someone goes through and puts 45% windows in, if this passes, and if someone puts 45% windows in, it doesn't mean that in a year they'll have to tear those out and put in 15% windows. They have those for the duration.
No, I understand that, but windows just don't show up overnight. So if they're going to start the process, there's a very good chance they're not going to have those windows within a year, and they're not going to be installed, and they're not going to be in compliance of something
Okay.
they just spent a lot of money
I
to
don't think
order.
that's accurate either.
If I could, maybe it's my motion that needs clarity.
Okay.
Would you feel more comfortable that the delay of implementation includes that if you make an application to replace, just the application, not the arrival of the product, if you get your application in within the year while we're doing this reevaluation, that you would be good to go? That would solve your problem, I believe.
I think it would go a long way to helping, yes.
Okay, that was my intent in making the motion, and I evidently did not make it clear enough.
Well, I think the intent is well-meaning, but I think think what I'm hearing is there seems to be a majority of folks who are comfortable with reinstating the 45% and then coupling that with additional enforcement and education. This concept of every year or every 6 months or revisiting this creates uncertainty. And as you're trying to plan, a lot of buildings like uniformity, when they put their windows in, it creates an uncertainty out there that I think is very problematic. And again, having seen the 15% glass, I think it causes an angst, and legitimately so, amongst many folks. So if we revert back to 45%, and I acknowledge, and I'm open to any of the enforcement ideas and education ideas, I think that would be a more appropriate motion, given the conversation that we've been having.
I don't think any of us, has anybody in the council been inside a unit with 15% glass?
I have not.
And and one thing that I would go along probably with this motion is that if we say that within this year, and I think a year is a reasonable time. This is not like building a house. They're not tearing down and building a house from scratch. This is getting lights in, even the PG&T lights, which are the ones I understand are the furthest out.
Glass.
Or sorry, PG&T glass, they're not out by a year. And this is just window replacement, which is a pretty easy permit to get. But I would maybe within that intervening year, we can discuss the idea of a management plan to put more control and responsibility in the hands of the condo associations. Because the other thing about it is it's not just unit by unit. I assume there's some condos that rent out a lot, and there's other condos that either don't or don't rent out at all. And the ones that don't rent out at all are probably the ones that education has already worked on. It's the ones that are transient renters that have the difficulty with getting people educated.
I can tell you from experience, having recently had PGT windows put in, it does take over a year to get the windows, and that was before COVID. So there is a lag on getting product. A year is, it's not what it used to be now, and it takes a long time. It's not just, the glass was an issue for us. They had the frames, they had all the product to do it, but they just couldn't get the glass. So there's different reasons why things get held up, and we're talking a few windows. They're talking several hundred. So I support what Councilor Adderholt just said. I think I agree with his statement that there's a majority here that are saying the same thing, maybe just not exactly.
Okay, so we'll go back to your original motion, Vice Mayor. Did you want to withdraw that and restate it, or do you want to just
Well, I
drop?
guess I would amend it to make it clearer that should a person receive their permit to replace their windows within that year, even though the product has not arrived, that they would still be good to go. But I'm not withdrawing the motion. I guess I'd like to have a vote on it.
Okay.
But are you amending it?
Yes.
I would amend my second, but just say that they have to prove that they've ordered the glass within a year, not just have a permit.
That's fine.
All right. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Nay.
No.
Nay.
Okay. The motion fails.
I
Now,
didn't hear your vote.
Me?
I'm a nay.
Yes.
I said nay.
I didn't hear the mayor's vote. I was just asking for.
Fine, that's fine. Okay, is there a motion in the alternative?
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we reinstate the 45% designation in our ordinance and couple that with additional enforcement and education initiatives.
I'll second.
I have a question. Is that by us, by the condos, or by both?
All of the above.
Okay, discussion. I will tell you that the only reason that I'm not leaning towards this 15% and the moratorium and all this other stuff is because I believe that if you have the 45 glass and you have compliant people who draw their curtains at nighttime to keep out, and you have the proper enforcement from the various facilities, that's sufficient. That's sufficient. Now, because of that, I am saying that there has to be strict enforcement, not just the condominiums, but the hotels, the motels, the bars, the restaurants, everybody on the Gulf front plays by the same rules. And that's not to infer that they haven't been, but that would be my reason for voting this way. So
For clarity, Mr. Adderholt, your motion is to instruct staff to bring us back a new ordinance with those revisions in it. And
Yes, it's,
just so everybody understands, that's not effective today. We have to go through a 2-hearing process in order.
since there's nothing pending before us,
Right.
you're correct, yes.
Right.
This is more or less the direction. Any further comment? Okay, I will ask again. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, the motion carries 3-2 with Vice Mayor and Councilman Veach dissenting. Okay, we'll move on. The last item today, or the next item, I should say, is final public comment. Is there any comment? Yes, sir.
Hi, Dave Nussbaum, Island Winds. I'd like to thank the council today for looking at modifying the ordinance to bring us back to a 0.45 glass. And I'll submit this for the record as well. We do have visitors that we have sign stating that they are aware of the turtle ordinance, they're aware of the fine. As I've stated earlier, we have pop-ups, refrigerator magnets, we have signs in the elevator, and we are doing everything we can to ask the visitors coming down to comply. We have, I have sent a text out on one of the websites asking if the MRF can't come down to Santini Plaza. They spend a lot of time up north, and we'd like to have a pop-up booth or two come down and educate on the south end of the island. I think that would be great. As I said before, we are trying to be stewards of the beach. We are trying to educate our visitors. And I thank you for acknowledging that fact. We will work with staff to do what we can to provide information so that we can get on top of anybody that's violating it as quickly as possible. That's our commitment to the town. So with that, I won't take up any more of your time.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for the move that you made today. I'd just like to reiterate a couple of things I said earlier. Robert Galvanoni, and I'm from Carlos Point, 8350 Estero Boulevard, 104 units. I hope a picture of our condo is not in that group because I know it was much darker. I went back to the condo about 9 o'clock. I didn't go out into the sand and look back, but it was dark. It seemed very dark. People have gotten the word, but that was this week's people. We have people turning over every week. I have my own personal approach to it for my renters, and it's going to be every night I'm going to be texting them saying, draw the drapes, draw the drapes, draw the drapes. And they're not going to like it, but I've talked to every one of them personally too. So they got the message. But I do need to reiterate the speeding ticket idea. If I'm going 35 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour speed area, and the policeman pulls me over, gotcha. You know, what am I going to say? I have to go up here. But here, if it's, well, out of 104 units, I saw 2 windows that weren't drawn. Is that really enough to throw the turtles off? There's this conservancy group that came by talking to us about, well, maybe there's some things you can do to the exterior of the building to change the lighting. They still owe us a report, but they came during the day and at night. They take pictures. They take pictures of the building way out by the water and closer. And the little thing says X number of foot candles. So they can measure how much light. Now, if I've, and we will not bother Chad if he comes out there. We're about 1,000 feet from the water's edge. Got a big beach. If he wants to come halfway up at 500 feet and take a picture and tell me how many foot candles there are, and email it to me and tell me I have a violation, great. We have 4 people actually, and we can give them all 4 email addresses. Send it to us, and by the end of the next day, we will have people all over the condo owners who are violating. And we've passed a resolution. They will pay the fine, not the association. So, legible citations, speeding ticket approach, maximum dollar amount for the year. Trying to chase down $60,000 worth of violations would be crazy, but we understand there are times when you need to pay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
George Rapetti, Islands End. Thank you very much for what you did here today. It made a lot of sense. Secondly, there is no one here, nobody on this side of the room that's going to tell you they don't want strict enforcement. We actually years ago got an award from Turtle Time at Islands End. We want strict enforcement. We want fair enforcement. We want complete enforcement. Comment was made by the mayor about, I think, something I might have said before, and I'm going to repeat it. Every time Chad comes down and provides us with pictures of lights that aren't proper, when he goes to CAMFB and brings the pictures, they're always condos. Chad, I'm going to make you an offer. If you have pictures of the hotels and so forth prior to today that you've taken as you walk down the beach, as you drive down the beach, and you can show them to me, I'll apologize to this in front of you to the council at the next meeting. If not, maybe we can discuss what you've been doing. Secondly, strict enforcement. If you get stopped by a police officer and he says you're doing 55 and a 50, but he doesn't have a radar gun, what are you going to say? I guess you're right, I'm doing it? No, prove the case to me. Prove to me what I'm doing. He can't do that if it's just, I saw a light coming from up here. If you're arrested for DUI, there are certain instruments that are used in an arrest procedure for DUI. If they're not tested regularly, if he's not tested regularly, you lose your case. Prove your case. Mr. Vish, let him prove his case. Let him show where the lights are at such a degree that they would be bringing a turtle back to my building rather than to the ocean. Fair, honest, and strong enforcement. I'm an ex-police officer. Fair, honest, and strong enforcement. We want it, okay? We care about the turtles. We care about our beach, okay? Talk about looking it up on my building. You look at my building, you say, well, there's people there, a couple of them that come by the month, come by the week at Carlos Point. What about hotels? Everybody in that hotel is in for 1, 2, 3 days, 4 days a week, okay? Do you think they have as much care about the beach as we do? That's why I'm saying to you, if we have lights coming out of my condo building, they've got lights coming out of their hotels, and I want enforcement of the hotels as well as strict enforcement of the condos. Thank you.
John R. King, Islands End. Mr. Mayor, thank you for emphasizing equal enforcement. That was nice because I was kind of getting tired of hearing condo, condo, condo.
Glad you heard that.
Also, I'm kind of saddened that I was chastised for using hyperbole and assumption, and I heard a lot of hyperbole and assumption and some discussion around here today. As far as sea turtle disorientations, I guess maybe I don't understand. 6 to me is 6 individual turtles, not 600. Also, if you're referring, Councilman Veach, to the Sea Turtle Oversight Protection in Broward, a judge overruled FWC, and those folks are still in business and they're still allowed to book guests. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll close public comment. Town managers items.
Okay, a couple things, maybe on a little lighter note. One is that we're beginning our plans for the 4th of July parade. The parade will start at 10 o'clock on 4th of July. And if any of the council would like to be on the town's float, please be at Bay Oaks by the pool parking lot at 9 a.m. If you're going to be on another float or be a spectator like I will be, see you out there. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the town attorney is here today, and when this meeting adjourns, I will be spending the remainder of his time here with him, discussing the parasailing and jet ski ordinance to see if we can begin to finalize some language that we could bring forward to the residents and businesses and town council. I would hope that we could have a meeting next week to get their input. So that's our intent. And with the objective of bringing language for your consideration, begin that process at the next meeting. So that's what we'll be working on as soon as this meeting adjourns. We'll be going over the concepts and ideas that we've collected to discuss with the town attorney, and we will be kicking off that process. And I guess I'm just going to say, I'm not talking about the total glass versus X percent of tinting, but here's what I am going to say. It's very easy to say, I put a sign up in the building, don't do this, or I put in an agreement, don't do that. It's another thing, it's very simple. These folks live there. There's members of the board that live there, either seasonally or part-time. They can go out to the beach and look during turtle season up at their own building. Okay? And if they could see a bright white or yellow light coming from one of the apartments, they clearly can go be proactive and go track down that unit and go talk to that person. So it's more than just posting a note or having someone sign, I will comply. And I appreciate the gentleman who said he's putting out texts, but it's very easy. They can just walk out to the beach. And particularly if they have a property where the renters turn over, the vacation renters turn over every Saturday or Friday or whatever, it's very easy for them to go out there that night and take a look and see who got the message of the educational part or needs further reinforcement. So I just wanted to say that. So
And I do also.
versus just relying on Chad to catch me if you can type of situation.
Right. I think there must be some kind of technology out there where you can come up with a quantifiable light. But I realize that, not every night is created equally. So if it's a clear full moon night, the chance of a disorientation is pretty low. If it's stormy or there's no moon, there's very little light to give them to indicate which way they should go. So it takes less light to get a disorientation. So it's not a simple process.
And then the last point I just want to make about that is, and I kind of alluded to an earlier comment, when I talk to the general managers of the hotels, because Chad told me that the night before there was an issue there, I usually just get them on the phone and read them the riot act, and that pretty much takes care of the issues for the season for the most part. So the good news, we have that relationship. They're doing what they can do. They are dealing with the same turnover situation. And I do, tell them to do the same thing that I just alluded to, which is have somebody on your staff who's running around taking care of the place anyway, go out to the beach, as part of their duties at night, look up at your building. This is not really a scientific, you don't need a neurosurgeon to tell you that there's an issue here. You can look up at your own building and you could see if there are potential issues, and you could begin to address those internally without the town's involvement, which is the best way, I think, of enforcement. I think everyone would agree with that. So hopefully we can encourage people to do that, to augment the other methodologies we have in place. I guess I'll close my comments with that.
Okay, town attorney.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, I just wanted to, I've been silent. I help staff present the cases that go before the special magistrate, including the ones for total lighting violations. And the majority of cases that we present to the special magistrate do involve a disorientation. We have evidence of disorientation. We have evidence where, we advise the property owner businesses, single-family homes, and condos. That, we provided you with a notice that you were, in violation of the the lighting regulations, and you didn't take actions to remedy them. And as a result, there's been a disorientation that has been documented by Turtle Time, and we present that information to the special magistrate. So it's not necessarily in isolation that, oh, you just have a light on. Most of the cases that we present are in fact related to a specific disorientation that we can identify and show that the turtle was going toward the light source of the home or the business or the condo that's been cited. Second to that issue, I have the unique perspective of not only representing governments, but also representing developers from time to time. And I have been, two of my clients have been the recipients of FWC audits for lighting violations. Believe me, you don't want that. We were told that we had lighting violations for lights that were literally on the other side of a 20-story building. And FWC's contention was, well, it adds to the ambient lighting because it went up and it wasn't amber. So I'm just saying to you that, based upon my experiences, your staff is diligent. They work very closely with the property owners, and only in the extreme incidents where there's been a documented turtle violation or disorientation is generally the cases that we actually take forward to the special magistrate. And I'll leave it at that. The last and remaining item that I have for you all is to inform you that a couple of meetings ago, I advised this body that we're going to be having a mediation with Mr. Rude with regard to his ADA claim against the town. We spent, I don't know, Roger, 5 hours?
4 plus.
Yeah, 4+ hours. And not once really was the ADA the issue. It was about the denial of his beach dune walkover, tangentially as it related to the ADA alleged violation. And frankly, it was very unsuccessful. I mean, we both put forward what I believe has been this council's direction to staff as what it would take for the item to be reconsidered. Principally, staff brought to Mr. Rude's attention that the actual dune walkover that was presented actually ends in the middle of the dune, does not actually go over the dune system. Don't know if you all recall that, as well as the issue of public access. And from Mr. Rude's standpoint, those were non-starters. And so summary is that was unsuccessful. So the case will move forward. Discovery is in the process of being completed. Our outside counsel that has been appointed by the League of Cities will be moving forward with filing a motion for summary judgment. And based upon the conversations I've had with outside counsel, they feel very confident in that succeeding, but we won't know until it's actually filed and we have an order from the court. So if there's any questions, I'll try and answer them.
Any questions for John? Is that it, John?
That's
So
it.
John,
Okay.
when you say you only go in front of the magistrate when there's a disorientation, is that because that's the level of proof you need to be able to get through the magistrate?
We feel staff feels very strongly that those certainly are cases that need to be presented. There have been some situations in some cases where the underlying violation has been, we've notified you repeatedly that you have lighting that is non-compliant and you failed to take any action to comply. And so we initiated in one instance a case with against that property owner. And as a result of that, I do believe that staff had extensive conversations with the owner and management company of that particular, I believe it was a condo building, may have been a hotel, and the issue was ultimately resolved before any significant fines were incurred.
So just to help clarify that issue, our priority is for fining, for monetary fines, is disorientations. Then from there, the next year down is lack of responsiveness to a notice of violation or a warning letter where they've been warned that they have a problem and they don't appear to be taking serious, remedial action to address it. And then the vast majority of the work are just warning notices that.
Okay, that last one you talked about, with someone has is a habitual offender for lights, that you don't impose fines in those cases.
We take them.
No, we do, but so one of the concepts that you all discussed, and I'm glad the condos kind of alluded to it themselves today, is that the argument is, well, this week that was unit 12, and then this week it's unit 23, and next week it's unit 37. So one of the conversations we'll have to have as we look at the tinting and sort of this management plan commitment on behalf of the condos to try to help us enforce it is for the associations to say, hey, it doesn't matter to us what unit in our building it is. If it's if that person is a member of our association, we're going to help you take action to address this. So, we'll see where that conversation goes when we meet on the first reading.
Okay. Go ahead, Roxanne.
I guess since we have had a motion that included stricter enforcement, for my clarity, my last understanding was that we did turtle enforcement once a week. Is that still the case? And are we going to move it then to more times per week because we have this motion?
Well, right, that's correct. Right now, it's one night per week.
Right.
And clearly, what we would typically try to do under the council's comments today to try to up our enforcement efforts would be clearly put in more emphasis at the beginning of the season, and hopefully towards the end, middle and end of turtle season, everyone will have been, gotten their ducks in a row and there'll be less issues. And we can get back to perhaps the once per week, but we don't know. But clearly, we're going to try to readjust.
Well, the hatching season is at the end of the season, not the beginning of season.
Right. Well, we're trying to develop good habits that will carry us through the season. But the point is that we're going to have to readjust some of Chad's workload so that he can spend more evenings out there, perhaps 2 per week, to try to, again, work with all the stakeholders who are on the beach to address our problems. The question really becomes, as I said, whether it's a hotel room or a condo or anyone who has multiple lights or multiple rooms, is that, where they can help us and they can help themselves is go out there and look at it without us. We'll go there and we'll do the initial inspection, but today Jim's, he has automated system, but there could be a powder outage and his automated system could be 4 hours behind schedule. It'd be great if whoever.
Hopefully, if there's a power outage, my lights won't be working either, but yeah, your point's
when
well
it comes
taken.
back on,
I got
your
you.
blinds could be off schedule. So my point is that hopefully someone in his building is saying, hey, Jim, I noticed this, if he doesn't notice it himself. So I think that's what really my focus is going to be, is see if we can encourage representatives of hotels, or restaurants, the buildings, whatever, go out on the beach themselves for 15 minutes.
But I don't think that's what our motion said.
No, I understand that. And the answer is that if you want us to go out there every day, that means we're going to have to add staff. I think we could probably do 2 days a week.
Well, it's not, to the vice mayor's point, I agree with her. It's not so much going out there every day because as long as folks don't know which day they're going out, you have an element of surprise there. But I do think when the photos are taken, and when I was on the condo board, we were the recipient of Chad's photos, and they're pretty good. And only the people in the building know which units correspond with those lighted units. And there's some that are just clearly ignoring this ordinance, and they're oftentimes rental units. And I think ours came with a warning with it listed the fines and so forth. And I got to tell you, that was really helpful for us as a condo board to go to the individual unit owners and say, look, I hope you realize that if you do this again, this $500, the condo association's not going to pay for it. You're going to pay for it. And boy, we got a lot of compliance out of that. It was a very helpful process. I just think we need to step it up. And that goes both sides, condo folks and hotels, restaurants, bars, everybody needs to ratchet it up and help Chad and the town comply. But at the same time, sometimes that occasional fine for the egregious offender is really helpful for us to sort of put a little scare in folks and get the enforcement ball rolling a little bit.
Well, I think we try to be judicious when we issue fines and when we issue warning letters. And again, we're trying to get compliance, but I think the biggest issue I see with this and every other violation is that this sort of, it's not a violation unless the town sees it. That's not true. It's a violation if you see it too. And that's the point that I think we need to get across to people.
That's fair.
But we'll do twice a week inspections, and if you feel there's a need for more, we'll have to see how we can rearrange our staff to do that.
Mr. Attorney, are you finished?
Yes, sir.
Okay, councilman items, Councilman Veach.
Okay, I was just going to go back to our street lighting discussion we had. When I was looking at some of these numbers, one thing that really kind of surprised me is that the majority of the cost that was put forward was not for anything in Estero, but it's for an additional 1,000 lights on the side streets, which is something I don't think we really discussed as a separate issue and got feedback about whether, whether that's something we want to do.
Because I don't understand what you're saying or asking.
Well,
It's the thing that I mentioned before when we were having the discussion. What I was trying to just guide the discussion to was if we need lights on Estero Boulevard for safety, let's narrow it to that and work that into the budget discussion that we have that's coming up so that we get something accomplished. The side streets can wait.
Yeah, because right now we have 217 poles on our side streets. Or I'm not sure exactly how many, but it goes from like 200 something to 1,000 poles on our side streets. That's the majority of the cost of this project is not Estero, but it's lights on the side streets. And as a separate conversation, I think it's probably come up in the Public Safety Committee about those, but I don't think we really had a discussion on council about whether we want to separate those out and talk about it separately or have it as part of the whole package.
No, I agree. I understand what both you and Madam Vice Mayor are saying, and I don't disagree with you. I just wanted it to be clear that the totality of the number, if we're trying to do what we need to do and what Murph is recommending, uniformity, then you need to look at the entire number and be prepared for what that entire number is going to be. Because as you well know, the concern is, well, if we're going to have amber here, but white lights on the side streets, what are we really gaining? So I just wanted it to be clear that the number, the totality of the number included the side streets so that people could make an educated decision on whether they'd want to support it or not. But I agree with you that in order to get something done, Estero Boulevard is very, very important, and that can be segregated from total number. You can have two different numbers, but I wanted it to be clear that this is what the total number could be.
You understand I'm saying that replacing the side streets with ambers is not something that's even in the table. It's an expansion and all the additional poles that go in to quadruple the number of lights on the side.
And I'm 100% in favor. If it makes this process of getting Estero Boulevard lit faster, I will support whatever that is.
Okay. And Roger, the workshop, you picked a workshop day for the,
No, yeah, we hope to, after I spend some time with John, have that today.
okay,
Workshop day for what?
for the jet ski parasail ordinance.
Let's be clear. We're gonna have a public meeting. We're gonna invite everybody in. And whoever has comments about the ordinance, we'll take those into account and we'll discuss our concepts that we think might help the situation.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Just a couple quick things. Had a couple constituents reach out to me, Mr. Town Manager, regarding, I guess I'll just ask you what the town's policy is with respect to a disabled veteran with a Florida disabled veteran plate. If they were to park in the Times Square area on the street and they had they had a violation for not moving their car within 2 hours, is that indeed the case? Does the town ticket folks with a disabled plate that was to stay longer than 2 hours without moving their
In
car?
accordance with the state law, if the time is posted, the use of that parking spot is limited to that duration.
If we as a council wanted to change that specifically and strictly for in a handicap spot for a disabled veteran, could we do that as a policy change or would we need an ordinance to do that?
If you wanted us to take one of our metered spots and make it a handicap spot without a meter, it becomes a handicap spot and the person who parks there could park there all day, or you could have us set it for a particular duration, whatever you would like us to do.
I guess the goal would be if somebody with a disabled plate parks in a parking spot I assume we have handicap spots for the town, right? And they park in a handicap spot that would be metered, correct?
No, we have spots, handicap spots that have no meter.
Okay.
We have handicap spots that are metered, and we have handicap spots that have a 2-hour duration. We have all three.
I guess the goal of the policy change would be if somebody parked in a spot that had a disabled veteran's license plate and it was metered, they'd still pay the meter, whatever, or if it's not metered, that's fine, they wouldn't pay. But if it's metered and it's in a spot where they have to move it every 2 hours, the goal of the policy change would be that disabled veteran would not have to go to their car every 2 hours and move their car. Is that possible? Could we do that?
Well, you could. If the case that you're following up on is the same one I saw, it was someone who is an employee at a business. But,
Yes.
So the 2-hour duration was created basically on Old San Carlos Boulevard, because the businesses along there wanted turnover in that parking versus someone who parked there for a longer period of time to go to the beach all day.
Gotcha.
So that's how that duration got created. So if the council wants us to modify that for one or more spots, we could do that.
My question is this: I was under the impression that under state law, we weren't allowed to charge for handicap parking. Is that correct?
We have parking spots that are not metered, and we have some that are metered. And
But John, isn't it,
when you park in a metered spot, my understanding is we don't necessarily, you could do that for the 2 hours without paying us, but you stay for 2 hours.
I'm not talking about that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. What I'm talking about is state law prohibits us from charging people for parking in a handicap spot. And if that's the case, and we changed it, then we would in effect be giving a free parking spot. And believe me, I have all respect for handicapped veterans, but we would be giving a free parking spot to an employee all the time because the state doesn't allow us to charge them.
So just so I'm clear, that the town has both a free handicap spot and a metered handicap spot? Is that how I'm understanding it?
But I don't think we're allowed to give them a ticket if they don't pay in the metered spot.
So we generally will not, if you have a handicap placard, usually even if you don't pay the meter, typically we will not give you a ticket for not paying the meter, but we will give you a ticket if you exceed the duration.
Yeah, the goal of the policy change, assuming my colleagues agree, would be that anyone with a disabled veteran license plate not be required to move their car every 2 hours. I appreciate, I'm not blaming the town because I know that this was a policy set a long time ago. But I think we ought to carve out an exception for a disabled veteran and if they're in a, if, I'm not saying it's free, if there's a meter there, whatever the policy is now, fine, just keep it. But they should not have to move their car every 2 hours if they have a disabled veteran plate. I think that's all I'm saying there, Roger. Does that make sense practically?
Jim, I understand what you're saying, but I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
Okay.
If we do that, this person who is an employee of a business downtown will get a free parking spot for his entire shift for all time.
But don't they have
Which
that
isn't-
don't they have that already? If they're parking in the unmetered
If they
handicap
went,
spot?
if they went to a place where they had to move their car more often, they would still have a place, but
Counselor, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think it's a proximity issue. So the person, I believe, based on what I read, and I could be wrong, I'm only going by what I read, is the spot closest to where they want to be is one of our 2-hour spots, and therefore they have to move their car every 2 hours. However, we have other spots that are further away that don't have that 2-hour limitation, but they don't want to be further away. And that's why this sort of issue has risen.
So our 2-hour spots with the better proximity are metered spots that we don't charge handicapped folks. So we're not allowed to charge folks that are handicapped?
I don't believe we do. We don't charge them, but they have to, unless they exceed the 2 hours, if it has a 2-hour limit.
So in essence, they would just not, if they didn't have to move, they would be able to stay there for 8 hours they don't have to pay anyways. So when they come back after that 2 hours, what do they do if they don't have to pay? How does the town know they've come back every 2 hours and checked in?
Well, the areas are patrolled periodically, and they'll see the same car there, and they'll take note of that.
Okay, I'm gonna have to think about this one.
Wouldn't it just be cleaner, Counselor Adderhoff, if it's a handicap parking, that there doesn't need to be a time frame on it? I mean, wouldn't that make it cleaner and easier for everyone? If your goal is to not have them move their vehicle every 2 hours?
I guess it might, Counselor Allers. I was trying to distinguish the disabled veteran to try to keep the class as small as possible and the impact as small as possible.
Well,
'Cause I know a lot of folks have handicap spots, have tags that, it's a much broader population. But a disabled veteran is a pretty unique person and has obviously, and everybody would agree, has done a unique service for our country. To force them to move to wherever it is, it seems like it's a little bit of an insult, a jab. And I know it's not intended that way, but I'm trying to think.
this person already has a free spot for as long as they want, just a little bit further away. That the state has already granted to all disabled people, in effect, free parking for all disabled people.
Yeah, I need to think about it a little bit. This is a lot of new information, but I think it's helpful for the public to at least hear what the policy is. Second issue is had a conversation with the town manager earlier this week, and he shared with me, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this because I had to kind of get this out to the folks impacted, that there's a potential problem with the Times Square timeline because the state legislature and the budget, the town manager and our grant team has gotten, to their credit, $2 million in earmarks for the Times Square project that are currently in the state budget, which pushes back our timeline to start the Times Square project to the point where, correct me if I'm wrong, town manager, if I misstate any of this, it pushes our timeline back to the point where it may bleed into season next year, which could cause obviously some hardship for our businesses in Times Square, A, and B, the way the town manager is going to shape the bid or for the contractors, that they're going to be working in multiple shifts, so they could be potentially 24/7 shifts or maybe something to a little lesser extent. So the other option would be for them to start after Easter in 2023 with the goal of still finishing by September, which would be the opening date for Margaritaville. And again, an accelerated contractual arrangement with the contractor to make sure it gets done by then, A, and B, it allows the town then to order the supplies in advance to make sure there aren't any supply chain issues when when all that proceeds. So I reached out, somehow I became the liaison to the businesses, and Anita Saracita kind of was the ex officio chair of the business group there, at least with respect to this effort. And so I reached out to Anita to share this with her. She shared it with the Times Square folks, and promptly responded back. And I just wanted to read this for the record so the town manager and my colleagues could hear this, because this impacts everybody, obviously, because it's a big part of the Renaissance, but it's still, I understand the dynamics here, and I think everybody else does as well. She responded, Jim, as requested, I put out an email to the Times Square business owners and have received back replies from over half of the folks unanimously agreeing that the delayed start date of April 2023 makes more sense than the unknown elements of an August 2022 start. There were other concerns raised, most notably the pergola versus sail shade covering at Pete's Time Out. I would ask that you follow up with this particular issue so that current business owners Debbie and John Lawlow and future business owners Mike and Tiffany Roost can put this to rest. It seems that there have been conversations signaling no problem to the change, and yet nothing concrete, at least that I'm aware of. One other comment was made by someone also doing construction that storage facilities were becoming very costly and hard to come by. I passed this along as regarding the idea of storing materials for the project. Several folks were very encouraged with the idea that the contractors would be working 24-hour shifts and/or incentives or penalties to complete the project on time. This was appreciated. One final note made by a couple of folks was the question of whether or not the town would be painting the pavers or cleaning it up to basically improve the appearance before the project begins, as it's currently looking somewhat rough. I've copied everyone on this email so that you can see what I relayed. And she has some nice closing comments, but that's the thrust of it. I just wanted people to know that the town has been working collaboratively with the business owners. The town manager, through this communication, has been communicating with them. We did give them a choice, and it seems to be that they're leaning towards the latter choice, which I believe is the town manager's recommendation. If there's anything you want to add to that, Roger, you're welcome to do so, but I just thought I'd just make this sort of public process more transparent. I hope that was helpful.
Our goal is to implement the project with the minimal amount of disruption to the businesses. And given the way the state grant cycle works and their typical timing in terms of not only the grant award, but until you get the paperwork and get it executed. As I expressed to all of you, I was concerned that, and with the lead times for ordering materials, it would be problematic to ensure that if we try to implement the project in 22, that we wouldn't crawl into the 23 season. Whereas if we began construction in literally, I think the Monday is April 17th of 23, we clearly could get in and out of Times Square well before season starts. Only, I guess, big date we might impact site would be July 4th of 23. But other than that, we can get in and out of there without have any major disruptions to their business. So as I sit here today, I can't even tell you because I don't even have the documents in hand. And I guess the other thing that I think you all understand, but I'll just say it for the public's assumption, any dollar we spend prior to the grants being executed don't qualify for the grant. So it's not a matter, well, we could wait and sign the grant in August or September, but we can order things today. We can't. Anything we buy would not be grant eligible. So having said that, and as you correctly concluded, Counselor, if business disruption is a priority for the town, minimizing that, the safest course is 23.
And just to further clarify that for folks who may be listening, it looks like shortly after Easter of 2023 with the goal of completing by August or September of 23. Is that fair, Roger?
Well, there's two elements. There's the element of the underground work, which is the most disruptive part of the project. And that's where, we want to sort of try to minimize that time frame and as much as possible. And that's where the 24-hour work, type work comes into play. Portions of the actual walking surface will be torn up, whatever. So we want to get that completed and a new surface down. Now we're talking about we have a new surface down and installing things on top of that surface. And clearly, while that will be disruptive, that's you can't even compare them in scale. It'd be a lot less disruptive. You might be disrupting one business while you're putting up the pergola or shade in front of that business, but you wouldn't be disrupting anybody else. So clearly, our goal is for that underground infrastructure phase, whatever you want to call it, paver phase, get that done as quickly as possible, because that's where the dust, the dirt disruption is really going to be. The other stuff wouldn't be any more inconvenience than if we were to go out there and repaint the pavers per se, or something like that.
Except for the fact that there is a broader aesthetic goal of wanting to be done with the Times Square project by
Right.
September
Well, I
2023
think
for obvious reasons.
Right. Well, I think what we don't want to do is be under construction, after a major redevelopment happens in that area. It just would seem to be constant, sort of putting the area under constant duress. So we would like to be done before the major construction is done in that area if possible.
That's what I wanted to hear. Beautiful. Thank you. That's all I have.
Vice Mayor.
I guess I'm still not clear on this. I was planning on bringing it up myself because I was looking to see if, I thought it might have even been mentioned in the monthly reports. But Roger, were you looking for some consensus from us today to let you know that we're okay with the delay?
Well, of course, that's always a good thing.
Well, and I don't feel that was made clear because no one else spoke up.
But
so-
I mean, where we really are was really more of a heads up, because I'm gonna get those grant agreements here, and I'm gonna seek council authorization to execute those. And when that happens,
You don't need a consensus today.
yeah, when that happens, I'm gonna tell you at that time that in all probability that there's no way we can't be done and not impact their
I
season.
think the goal was just to have some transparency about where we're at.
Okay.
Because I think part of the challenge is that the governor isn't expected to sign the budget until late May. So we won't even know about the 2 million definitively until then. But is more, if we can give folks a heads up ahead of time as best we can, that might save some.
I was
angst.
just seeking clarity
No,
as
that's
to
fair.
whether he needed a consensus.
I got you.
And the other item I also had was from the monthly reports. Public Works had a couple questions for us, and I didn't know if you wanted us to discuss those, Town Manager.
That's why we put them in. The
Items requiring council direction from the Public Works Director. Does the Town Council wish to have the newly purchased land behind Town Hall fenced off? I didn't mean to choke you, Mr. Adderholt.
Well, here's the tissue here. Thank you.
I guess I would morph that into a more general discussion of what we're doing with it. So I guess if this doesn't have to be, if you don't need any consensus today, I guess I'd ask informally if we could just move this to Thursday for discussion.
Yeah, we don't need consensus today. I think we're really putting that in there to sort of lay the groundwork for your budget discussion. So like if you do as part of those discussions or discussions prior to that, say that, yes, we would like to have the property fence. Obviously, then we have to allocate money for that fencing. So it's just really a precursor to that process as much as.
And I guess the question I would ask for you to talk with staff at this point is, my see of an immediate need that we have is for more parking. And whether we end up using that land for more parking in the long term, maybe fencing would not be helpful when it comes to opening that parcel up to be used for more parking. I know I currently park at Chapel by the Sea just because I'm trying to leave parking spaces for other people during town council meetings. So I guess that would be my leaning at this point towards staff direction is there a way to use that property for more parking in the interim until we decide long-term what we're using it for? And that leads,
It's currently zoned residential, right?
and that leads to my second question, which is in the report, which is, does town council wish to have the staff begin the process of a zoning request? And my question is, do we need to do a zoning request in order just to temporarily use it for parking?
We'll look at that and have that answer for you.
Okay, so I guess informally, I'd like to ask my fellow council members, is it okay if we add this discussion then to Thursday, even though it's not on the agenda for Thursday?
I'm okay with it.
Fine.
Sure.
Okay. Councilman Allers.
Most of it's been covered, but I do have one last thing. I've been contacted by several people that live down close to Linnell Road that have had issues with that crosswalk. We've all probably heard from them several times, but it is probably one of the most dangerous crosswalks on Estero Boulevard. If you've driven that road, you find yourself looking, if you're coming north, you're looking to the right and you don't really notice that anybody's in that sidewalk over there trying to come across. I've reached out to, I guess my question is, I've reached out to our town manager and I've reached out to the fire chief to discuss potentials of things that could be done there. Whether it be one of the flashing lights that go there. But in speaking with the fire chief, the fire station at Denora has one of those signals that will stop traffic should they have to come out with their fire trucks. Linnell Road does not. So my question is, would the council be okay if I reach back out to the chief to see if he would be willing to do a letter to the county that hopefully the town council and the staff could endorse as well about getting some sort of lit up beacon, whether it be a crosswalk beacon or one of the, whatever the technical term is for the emergency lights for them to come out to respond to emergencies.
Councilor Allers, just a couple things. Are you talking about the safety of the pedestrian crosswalk or the light that would allow a fire truck to go to stop the stoplight?
Well, ideally, personally, I would like to see the one like they have at Denora, but because it's a crosswalk, I don't know if there's a way to integrate
Yeah,
a separate beacon.
Yeah, Council at all. I think the issue is that if we went to the county today and said we want a crosswalk at Linnell, they would say, okay, we need to check and the size and we'll think about it.
Well, let me just
let me
stop you there because I talked to Commissioner Sandelli just a couple days ago and on something else, and he mentioned that. He mentioned Councilor Allers' concern about that crosswalk for pedestrians, and he said something to the effect that, if your council collectively says, hey, we want to reprioritize the dollars for lighting on Estero Boulevard or the crosswalks that we currently have and prioritize Linnell, he says, if you collectively do that and share that with the county, that would be helpful. The fire department piece is a whole another piece of that puzzle. That's why I was trying to get a sense. Is it more concerned about the pedestrian crosswalk or the ability for the fire trucks to get it in and out of there? Because it is a difficult intersection. You're absolutely correct.
So I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
So exactly that. So when Councilor Allers came to me, I said to him, the fire department says that they need a device there to help them get in and out of their fire station. It becomes a county responsibility. If we endorse that, the county is obligated to come up with something. Now, what they come up with, we'll see. But I think that was the approach we were trying to take versus this other avenue that was being discussed of taking other money that was going to be used for the town and diverting some of it to do something else. So we were trying to take the approach that if the fire department needs a preemption at that intersection, let the county traffic engineers figure out what that needs to be. And then once they tell us what that's going to be, then we could step into whatever further augmentation we felt it might
need beyond what the county was willing to do.
And not to belabor, but I think Council or Commissioner Sandelli, who was contacted by a constituent saying how difficult it was to cross there as a pedestrian. So I think it's unrelated to the fire piece. His initiation of this issue was a little bit different because it was based on the pedestrian crosswalk safety dynamic, not necessarily the fire station. So he may not be aware of the fire station part. I don't know.
Well, I could tell you that in my conversations with him, he has not been aware of this part of it. I wanted to speak with my fellow counselors before I went any further with it. In my reaching out to the fire chief, it was, originally it came about because of the safety of the crosswalk.
Okay.
And my speaking with him, I wanted to get his understanding. He sees it every day.
Yep.
Does he feel that it's an unsafe crosswalk as well? And he did. And that's when he started talking about the beacon that they have at Denora, but they don't have there. And it just made me think, well, why can't we solve two problems? If there's an issue there, why can't we solve it with collaboration with all three entities? I think we can make that happen.
I think that's a good idea. I've just shared you with what I heard. I like where you're headed. Yep.
But I didn't want to move forward with speaking to Commissioner Sandelli until I spoke with you guys.
Just for a little history, 6 years ago, the unanimous council asked the county to please do something about Linnell because we had had a fatality there. Unanimously requested, asked them to make it part of the project because Estero Boulevard wasn't going to be down there for quite a while. They refused to do anything. It was so dangerous at that intersection that the town council actually allocated extra money to hire a crossing guard to stand down there. We got,
And now what do? They offer to help us using the money that they've already appropriated for the other crosswalks on the island. Big
So-
help, big help.
so I just want you to know, I'm all in favor of this, but just so you know, it's not because prior councils didn't try to do this. We have been, that one was like top priority. We begged for it. And like I said, went to the extent that we actually spent extra dollars on having a crossing guard down there during season because we thought it was so dangerous.
And I can
And-
appreciate that, Madam
yeah.
Vice Mayor, but I'm not one that gives up very easily. And 6 years ago, there were.
I'm not saying, I'm not saying this to discourage you. I'm saying it to let you know that it didn't get this way because we didn't try in the past, because we truly did.
I understand. I'm just bringing it up to see if my fellow counselors are okay with me moving forward with trying again.
Please.
Absolutely.
Well, but you're saying two different things. You're saying one, the crosswalk safety, and one, the light for the firemen to come out and stop Estero Boulevard. So are we agreeing that we want to pursue both of those items, or one and not the other? Or what are we agreeing
If the
to?
fire department wants it, I'm of course endorsing what they would ask, and I truly believe we need a second kind of assistance for the pedestrians as well.
Well, and I could tell you in learning more about this and reaching out and speaking to more people, we're not talking about a huge expense. When I found out what that beacon or what that signal device would take, I was kind of taken back. I thought it would have been much more expensive, quite honestly, but it's something that I think that can be achieved, and maybe it's both. Maybe it's one or the other. At the end of the day, we all know that we don't own Estero Boulevard and we don't have the say of what can go in there, but we can certainly make recommendations and plead our case. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do.
And I think you're absolutely correct. And just so I'm clear, though, that you're thinking about the potential flashers in addition to the beacon, because the only flashers are really on the other side of Leonardo Arms. So there's really not a lot of, the flashers are tremendously effective, I think, as long as you make sure people stop before you cross.
Well, actually, there's another flasher right at the south end
Wyndham.
of, the south end of Santini Plaza.
Is there a flasher there?
Yes, by your building.
But that's kind of nearly, closer to Leonardo Arms, though, right? I mean, I'm just saying that's the other end of Santini Plaza.
Yes, it's close.
Yeah, it's doable, but a lot of folks don't.
I mean, if it's a possibility to do both, I don't know why we wouldn't try to do both. If you could have both problems solved, that would seem to make the most sense to me. If you're going to spend the money to do the beacon that they need for the fire trucks, it would be a minimal cost, I would think, to add.
The difference is the fire department needs to be doing the ask, and then we would endorse their ask.
And that's what my
Whereas-
question was.
yes.
Is it okay for me to go to the fire chief and ask if he will write a letter to the county saying what they need? And in conjunction, we can say, this is what we need as far as from the,
I think it
How do
needs
you
to be
stand?
separated.
fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
The fire department needs to do their ask, we would endorse their ask, and then we would do a separate ask for our pedestrians.
Okay.
And unless the direction is to put a proper traffic light there.
That's gonna
Well, because to go further on your story, we got a crossing guard down there and they got hit and they quit.
I didn't even go into that.
So, I mean, it's an intersection that has all kinds of problems. And, when I was on the public safety committee, we went on and on and on and really came up with nothing.
There's a higher standard to get a traffic light than there even is to get a flasher, and we couldn't get a flasher. So what I'm saying is, it's really unlikely you're going to get a traffic light there. They have to show that there's so much traffic, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I can tell you that I can't speak as to what it was 6 years ago or anybody else's, but there's a lot of residents down there who are sending a lot of emails. And part of this discussion was so that they know who they should send those emails to as well. Not just myself, Commissioner Sandelli, there's other people that they need to send this to that have decision-making, and they've rallied, I'll tell you that. They're not going to go away. They're going to be very vocal. And I think if we have any opportunity to make that crosswalk safer, now is the time.
Tell them when they're rallying to rally a little with us, trying to get the lights out on Estero Boulevard while they're at it. We can use their help with that.
Got to start somewhere.
All right. All right. Anything else, sir?
That is it.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't have much. I just want to congratulate Jackie Lizak and her crew at the Chamber of Commerce for another apparently successful Taste of the Beach. Councilman Veach and Allers and myself were judges, and we were stuffed and overstuffed and everything else, and we had a grand time doing that. And then also congratulate Janine Palaskis and her crew down at the Beach Theater for another successful Fort Myers Beach Film Festival. I was honored to attend the closing ceremony last night and pass out the awards and help them with that. And it was, again, very successful. I think they had I think the number was about 700 applications of people that wanted to submit to little old Fort Myers Beach Film Festival. So that's pretty impressive from where that started.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I can't help but mention that there are several community groups on the island that contributed money to the film festival. So I just want to let everyone know that we had many citizens through their activism on community groups contribute money to help make the film festival successful. So
Well, good for them.
thank you to all of them.
We thank them as well, and keep up the good work. Okay, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved, seconded. Any discussion, any objection? We're adjourned at 12:38. Thank you.
Well, you guys have a really fun afternoon planned.